Because a lot of people like always ask me how do I feel about something said in Baeclast, so fucking hit them with the 3-hour video, dude. Okay, let's go. Let me know if I need to like up the volume or something like that. Okay, I think I do.
Hey guys, Socket here, and today we are joined by Chris Wilson for a very special Baeclast. We'll be covering everything 3.6. So, Chris, thank you very much for coming on. And other than having to put up with a slightly scuffed stream, I hope you're doing well. Also, before we get into it, I just want to quickly say
seems
this
to
is
load
the
fine.
2-year anniversary of Baeclast. So
Makes no
very
sense.
kindly gave us 30 loot boxes to give away, some of which we'll do during the stream, some later on YouTube. So sort of getting into it, what was everyone's kind of...
So I want you to be able to hear me if I talk over them. That's important. Or the other case is like, then I guess I'll just stop it whenever I say something. That's another option, of course, but...
First reaction to the league. So Chris isn't on the spot right away. Rise, what did you think about Synthesis off the bat?
Do you need still more?
A lot of blue. I very much love the aesthetic, and I've been looking forward to a league such as this one for the longest time. Although, the actual gameplay looks interesting too. It's not just about the blue. Especially the crafting methods. That's probably
like good for
the
me
thing
right
that
now.
I'm looking forward to the most. Crafting's been really fun lately in PoE.
Personally, I think it was probably the crafting as well for me. Chris, has there been like a solid push?
Oh no. And this is why we had a bit of a scuff start to Baeclast.
That's actually
internet
perfect.
has been cutting out.
Yeah.
I don't know where he was going with that question. I'm gonna guess he was gonna ask Chris, has there been a push towards improving crafting methods and giving players more tools recently?
We try very hard with each expansion to add new crafting stuff. This, of course, can be fossils like in Delve, or potentially the new corruption outcomes in Incursion. And with Synthesis, we wanted it to be kind of a first-class citizen, where we were designing the area synthesis alongside crafting options. And we really liked the idea of fiddling around with implicits in a way we hadn't done before. And so this is the design space where players can influence implicits a lot more than before that we're wanting to explore here. And it's quite scary, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine. Some of them seem...
Did he just say it's quite scary? As in, it's scary what they are giving us now? Or scary that they're giving us more options to craft like every league gradually? Or is he referring to this league specifically?
Seem incredibly powerful from what we've seen.
I should stress that the incredibly powerful ones are the rarest ones, right? Like we're showing off the interesting ones, but they're not dropping.
I mean, obviously, everyone knows from the past leaks that whatever they are showing us as a teaser will actually not even go into the game until us, the community, finds out like 1 week to the league that it doesn't even exist, and then we start bitching about it, and then they just add it then. That happened with like 2 or 3 different mods last league. You know, and then when they teach like crazy uniques, those uniques are always like the hardest to get.
Like candy.
Okay, I thought that might be the case. It's a nice reassurance to hear that though directly. Noogie?
Yeah.
Since Tarky's cutting in and out, we didn't finish all of the what are you hyped for the next league? So, what are you hyped for?
What am I hyped for? I'm hyped for collecting all the puzzle pieces, putting them together and running them.
Me too.
I think that looks really cool. The actual synthesis zones themselves, and seeing how that goes. I'm really looking forward to seeing how we interact with that system going up, like how it differs from Incursion and Delve, since it does seem like a mix between the two. And then obviously I always love...
Already just realized that this zone is basically already done. I have enough screenshots of this. Maybe I should just move to the next zone now. Like, they take this one screenshot and then just move to the next zone and do like wetlands. Or basically just take screenshots of Deadlands. I'm not gonna like stop and start like fucking working on how they work, but yeah. So I'm just gonna go Wetlands now.
Whenever they do anything to skills, so all the caster rework is really exciting and unique.
Yeah. For me, that's probably what I'm most excited about. Actually, is the complete passover of spells, and in particular, I really want to play Divine Ire. It looks really cool. I don't know if it's like going to be super strong. Obviously, we don't have numbers, but it looks really fun. So yeah. I don't care, even if it's mid tier or something. I'm gonna play the heck out of it.
It feels like a little fantasy.
Tarky, tell us what you're excited for while it's still working.
Very quickly, I think I'm most excited for the spell reworks and the new focus on the new dot aura, especially since I'm a big fan of dot builds. Chris, if you had to give us like the synthesis sales pitch and how it differs from previous leagues, like how would you do it?
Well, it definitely differs from previous leagues in the way it plays, and the general experience you get here is that playing through the game, it's a little like Incursion. You find these sub-areas that you play. They're very bite-sized content. You finish them quite quickly. It's not easy necessarily to complete all of them. The difficulty of those areas is proportional to how many connections that piece has. So the 3 and 4 connection ones are quite challenging to do, but of course those pieces are more versatile. So anyway, as you're playing through the campaign and maps, you get your bite-sized synthesis content. And then it's up to you, like with Delve, to what extent you actually, how often you engage with the full memory map stuff, whether you piece the pieces together one at a time and do shorter runs, or whether you try to make some epic chain of them to go for something further away. And we've been having a lot of fun this weekend actually balancing the rate that reward memories spawn relative to the Nexus in terms of how far away they are, what kind of stuff is on them, and getting that to feel really good. And so I expect that we're going to see some interesting strategy between, making short paths to go for the easy ones and much longer paths to go for the hard ones. And it's worth noting that this is relatively new information, but the way we've changed how global mods work means that it really encourages you to build some quite complicated structures, because now when you get a global mod, it affects everything that's connected in one block. It basically propagates outwards and puts that mod on all of those maps. And so the more global mods you can tag, which are now on the reward memories, give you a cumulative set of global mods that affect all of the connected things. So you definitely get rewarded very heavily for going all in and building some incredible structures.
That actually leads into a question that we had a little bit later down the dock, but it seems relevant now. Is there going to be a limited inventory space for the number of puzzle pieces, so to speak, we can collect?
Yes.
To build these long paths?
Yeah, you hold 10 at the moment, and we're still fiddling with that number, but we like 10. It lets you play quite a lot of areas without having to necessarily spend them all, and it gives you more versatility for when you do. But of course, it's very tempting to plug them in one at a time if there's good rewards nearby.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that, say that you were leveling a new character and you picked up 10 low puzzle pieces, would you have to?
Ooh, I can already see it. I can already see the. I mean, if we can do 10 at a time, that's pretty crazy. But I'm just I can already see the issue with fucking carrying all the. Oh wait, no, wait. How it works? It works so that when you complete the memory shit, right? It's not like a. It's not like an actual inventory item. Did I miss it? Let me go back a bit.
Quite complicated structures, because now when you get a global mod, it affects everything that's connected in one block. It basically propagates outwards and puts that mod on all of those maps. And so the more global mods you can tag, which are now on the reward memories, give you a cumulative set of global mods that affect all of the connected things. So you definitely get rewarded very heavily for going all in and building some incredible structures.
That actually leads into a question that we had a little bit later down the dock, but it seems relevant now. Is there going to be a limited inventory space for the number of puzzle pieces, so to speak, we can collect?
Yes.
To build these long paths?
Yeah, you hold 10 at the moment, and we're still fiddling with that number, but we like 10. It lets you play quite a lot of areas without having to necessarily spend them all, and it gives you more versatility for when you do. But of course, it's very tempting to plug them in one at a time if there's good rewards nearby.
Okay.
Wait, did he just dodge the question, or am I dumb? Didn't Octavian ask about inventory space? Well, what Chris was responding, said was about the maximum amount of memories you can connect together. That's not... Or did I just misunderstand Octavian's question? Octavian asked if there's a max memory. Okay, yeah. Okay, now it makes sense. So I'm just dumb. Yeah.
Is there any way that, say that you were leveling a new character and you picked up 10 like low puzzle pieces, would you have to run those before you could then pick up more higher level ones?
So the memory map is a per character thing, not per league. And the reason for this is twofold. Firstly, because it can be. And I say this because it's not like Delve. It's not a 1,000, 2,000 deep thing that you really need to keep your progress on. This is a thing with cycles where you deplete the reward memories and you go for a new one. Like it can be, within half a day of gameplay, you've basically wiped out the current state. So if you make a new character, you're not missing a lot. You'll just tag a couple of rewards you needed on the last one. But also because the way that the area levels work, we can completely avoid the problem where you've got this super high level board that you can't play on with your low level character by just having a different slate each. And so it's quite intentional that it's per character, and I don't think there are any drawbacks in this case.
Okay.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Chat is already screaming more than 10. Chat, you don't even know how it works. Come on.
We consider that per character or per league thing very carefully after kind of getting it wrong with Delve. Like we're conscious of the fact that it's a lot of work to rework it if we get it wrong, so we think about it very carefully before we commit now.
So let's say
before I go forward, like he said, within half a day. Now, what is that? Is that like half a day of Havoc, half a day of me, half a day of somebody who basically just started mapping, half a day of like what is the Blair base he's referring to? Yeah, Speedy Gonzalez for first time noob, yeah, because the half a day of playtime for Speedy Gonzalez boy is like 5 days for like a complete noob. So I'm assuming he's talking for like from like more casual perspective. But you have to remember the context in which he's talking about. He's talking in a podcast that basically just has like diehard players, and the main viewer base is quite a bit of just like those more invested players. So I hope that gets clarified at some point. But either way, I think it's gonna be fine to have it play like a character specific if it's not that big of a deal. Like if it's not like a massive.
You want to construct like the perfect little synthesis. Can you just use a few of them and then so you would use specific ones and just keep storing them until you have the perfect 10?
You can if you want to. I mean, there's no harm in just wasting the ones you don't want in the wrong direction and playing those while you're setting up the perfect ones for the run, because they only deplete at the point that you enter the areas. That's when the counters tick down. So it's entirely possible to kind of leave them on the map to some extent. Now, I believe the current limit for number of pieces that can be placed simultaneously is 25, but that's one of the things we're tweaking this week as we actually get to sink a lot of play hours into iterating on it.
So since your maximum inventory space is 10, but you said the maximum placed limit is 25, does that mean you can place them, not run them?
Oh, now I understand. The previous question more better. So he was asking how many, when he asked about inventory space, in the trailer, we have on the right side, we have like the interface or like whatever, the UI, where we have the memories that we can take. Yeah, okay. That makes a lot more sense. I thought I was just talking about the max amount of connections. And if the max amount of connection is 25, but the max amount of memories we have is only 10. Dude, I don't know. Dude. I really hope that they're gonna increase it. Or is it the board size? Like is it like 20? Is it like 5 times 5? Like the whole shit? But I guess it's basically just... So if you want to do those massive things, you have to fill your UI like 2.5 times before you can even do it. That sounds very, very like annoying, I guess. Yeah, the board is massive, but you can only put 25 in total. Yeah. So you farm up to 10 pieces, you place them, then you go and farm the next. Yeah, I don't know. This sounds like a lot of extra like annoyance because you have to like, you know, go like back and forth all the time.
And then collect more and continue to place? Is that how that works?
So I'll be specific about how this works. Okay, so once one is placed, it will sit there happily forever, and it's got a number of charges on it, and they deplete at the point that you enter the area
of course.
and click on the interactable object.
Yeah, I get it. You don't have to go 25, but if you want to go for those mecha chains, I'm assuming in softcore at least, eventually, if you want to minimax your shit, you're making a massive chain every time. That's an assumption. Because usually, minimaxing is the thing that you end up doing. Right? People were literally farming fucking Harbor Bridge or Foothills for Syndicate, right? Because it was more efficient. So, yeah.
Object which causes the basically there's like a force field that drops, and that lets you, in case you enter the area by accident and don't want to deplete it, it's that force field thing that lets you choose whether you're actually opening it up to deplete a counter. Now, there's a planning mode. So the planning mode is a lot like what you guys have been asking for the passive tree, which lets you anywhere just place the pieces down like a ghost version of them so you can plan out what your connectivity is. And the way it works is if a piece is planned, then when you get to the appropriate bridge, it will automatically lock that piece in and extend the bridge straight away. So you put the plan in, and as you play, the plan will just get locked in piece by piece. But that's not technically removing them from your inventory. You still have to enter the areas at least once to lock it in. But most of the pieces you place have like 3 to 5 charges, and so you don't have to worry too much about running out of charges because the reward places you're trying to get to only have 1 charge.
Did he just say?
And so about running out of have like 3 to 5 charges. You still have to enter the areas at least once to lock it in. But most of the pieces you place have like 3 to 5 charges, and so you don't have to worry too much about running out of charges because the reward places you're trying to get to only have 1 charge. And so you do get a bit of leeway, failing areas and that kind of stuff.
So it's the charge system that then allows for more placed pieces than inventory space.
Certainly. So you can go and play you can plan your pieces, which hasn't removed them from the inventory, and then you can go and run these. Each time you enter one, it will lock it in place, and that takes them away from the inventory and onto the board. And they have a number of charges that can be used. And then you can, of course, accumulate more pieces. And in doing so, you could have 25 down at once, potentially, assuming that's the number we keep. I mean, it could be higher, it could be a little bit lower, depending on how it plays.
Yeah. Specifics are probably going to be in flex. It sounds really cool. That allows you to make, like, absolutely massive chains.
And then the massive chains accumulate these crazy stacking global mods, and they really do synergize well together. Like one thing we were working out today in design is the concept of the fractured items drop from what we're calling synthesized monsters. Those are the monsters with the special blow effects on them. And so lots of the global mods also increase the drops of synthesized monsters by quite a lot and increase the number of synthesized monsters. So you can kind of double dip on this, where you're getting both.
There you go. I think that pretty much confirms that if you want to minimax your gains, you go for the bigs, like the big chains, because it allows you to stack those modifiers that increase like drops and maybe back size and everything like that.
Both more reward monsters that are dropping more fractured items, and they drop better. And so it's kind of an n-squared thing with the global mods. And so if you build a big chain of, say, 20 areas, tag 2 global mods in there, then you get quite a lot.
But if you put down 25 pieces like a retard and reach reward, well, then you just run the already existing nodes until they vanish to get more room on your board, I would assume.
So if you build a big chain of, say, 20 areas, tag 2 global mods in there, then you get quite a lot of bonuses for those areas.
And I'm guessing it's safe to say we'll get like one of these fragments per zone we run.
That's correct, yeah. For each zone you play through the main game and through the maps, you'll get a fragment if you successfully manage to stabilize it. I should note, it's actually quite hard to do the 4 connection ones. They're worth working for. They're not mandatory. If you fail them, you just have less versatility with the pieces you're placing. But if you can get a 4 connection thing, it lets you branch out and do cool T-junctions and stuff later. So you can have a big connected mass, and then a reward spawns nearby, and you just branch out from one of the spare connections to tag that.
We just had a little bit of lag. I don't know if that was on my end, though.
No.
No.
But
All right,
it works fine.
Ignore me. Keep going, guys. In that case, I'll go on, Rose.
Yeah, no, you go on. It's okay. I'm just trying to clarify on the chain mods, because so they're not.
Tarky, you just go first. I mean, I was just trying to you know. That's like yo, you eat first. You take the food first from the table, and then you immediately jump on it yourself. Good job, Bryce.
They're not really global mods then. They're chain mods.
Right, so previously they were described as global mods, and the reason for that was because we're experimenting with a model where they do affect everything. The problem is, you really, like, in order for them to be really powerful and impactful, we don't want the player to have too many, and they were kind of being granted by everything. And so, design iteration is as it is. We eventually came around to this version here, which is a lot more active. The player has to actually go and specifically activate them as a reward outcome. And so this makes it a lot more interactable. It makes them quite impactful. It lets us have them be really punchy and affect everything in the chain. We like it a lot more. So we're dropping the terminology global mod, and I don't know what we're calling it now, but it's got a cool effect on it at least.
Okay.
So, just out of interest, as a developer and as a player, what are the things you're most excited for about this new league?
So from a development point of view, I love the fact that we're getting to do cool stuff with implicit mods, and I have really enjoyed interacting with fractured items because surprisingly, it feels really good to get something while you're leveling through the game that's got like damage or attack speed locked in, and you can just use a few ults in order to get it to be a really good leveling item. Like that's, it saves dozens and dozens of rerolls. So that's a surprisingly nice thing. From a player, I think that the synthesis areas themselves have a lot of tension going on with the decay that follows you. We've gone through so many iterations of the blue wall of death that comes behind you to try to push you through the area. And there's so much tension between fighting the monsters because you want to get fractured items from them. Only monsters in these decaying areas can drop fractured items. So you're having to compete to get as many monsters killed as you can while making it to the stability points without getting hit by the decay. It's very tense.
So what actually happens if you get hit by the wall then?
So this is a huge debate that we have going on internally. We have many developers feeling that it should be incredibly lethal. We have many developers feeling that it should just kick you out. And we're working on a compromise because we don't want people losing hardcore characters. We understand sometimes you take the wrong turn and the wall gets you. But on the other hand, it is, possible to stay ahead of it. So I believe that we do have it dealing damage, but we also have it teleporting you out after a certain distance, like once it gets thick enough.
To kill them. Kill us, dude.
So it's sort of
fucking kill us.
It's sort of like incursion, but it damages you a bit before kicking you out.
It certainly damages you to stand in it, but it's not meant to be able to kill you. It just discourages you from taking monster damage. Now, we're iterating on this heavily, right? I suspect it's not going to be the instant death wall that chat is spamming, but we do want there to be consequences for getting the decay catching.
I just want it to be like a Thanos, like
forgotten though, just
wiping us out.
Instant death. Go to the Obus Cursed Trover.
So have you can?
Yeah, it doesn't send you to.
You either play T1 build or you can forget about league mechanics, or Chris is talking about his personal experience, and as we all know, Chris isn't exactly very good at the game. So again, it's hard to say, you know.
Standard, it deletes your character.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
get forgotten.
No account left, right? Support effects are gone.
So have you, as a hardcore player, have you
I'm sorry, by the way, Chris, you're a god. You're best player. Don't
timer.
I'm thankfully not personally working on balancing that. It's an unenviable task, but the team are doing a good job of setting that up. And it's when we say it kicks you out, we mean it sends you back to the last stability point. It doesn't just dump you on the main menu.
Yeah, I was imagining like kicks you out like Incursion does, where it sends you back to the map or something. Speaking of Incursion, I think it's a useful comparison point, and I'm just curious as to like how the memory fragments or the events that spawn in maps, whatever the terminology you're using for that is, compare in terms of necessary clear speed to Incursion. Obviously, we've had like some power creep in the game since that league, but if you could draw up a comparison.
I didn't know that.
I suspect that the versions of it that I have played are not final enough to be able to tell you exactly how it's going to feel compared to released Incursion, because right now it's changing 3 or 4 times a day, including on the weekend. But it certainly does. Like, it's designed so that a regular player who's far, far less skilled than most people watching this podcast are still able to collect the pieces with 2 connections on them, right? So they're not particularly hard. But it's when you get 3 or 4, you have to cover a lot more ground in a roughly similar amount of time before the Decay gets you. And so for those ones, which really give you a lot of versatility on the memory map, those are the ones that are going to start to require some either clear speed or just getting past the monster's speed. But then you've got the trade-off of the more monsters you kill, the more fractured items you're going to find. And you do need to find quite a lot of those, because it takes 3 of the same class of item to synthesize, and you're going to want to synthesize a lot of stuff, and so on and so on.
So then, is the mentality kind of like Delve when it comes to the really long pieces? If you got a 10-piece chain, is it actually supposed to kill you, or is it still supposed to be somewhat manageable for the average player?
Well, when you're playing a 10-piece chain, there are 2 things in play. The first one is it's long, which means you have to, have a bunch of time available to play through it. These things are about 40% of the size of a map each or something, so 10 pieces means it's roughly 4 maps with a duration.
Oh, okay.
So there's that. In addition, there's potential global mods that you've got on there, right? So the global mods, they're certainly rewarding, and I don't think currently they do make it substantially harder. I'll have to check. I'm pretty sure the global mods are just beneficial at this stage. May vary, though. But the important thing to note is that you are trying to chain this towards some reward island that's sitting off, reward memory that's sitting off in the distance. And in order to do this, most of the pieces you've placed have a number of charges that's greater than 1. So if you fail and horribly botch it up, you can come back and there's just lower fragment counts available. And you'll probably find that due to the fact you've worked on the structure for a number of iterations, that some of the counts are hitting 0 and vanishing before others. So you kind of have to do repairs on your thing. If you get a few failures in there, or if you get unlucky with the number of charges they have, then you have to kind of repair it by putting pieces in that are functionally equivalent.
Damn, that's really cool. I like that a lot.
Nice.
So in the Ziggy reveal video, it seemed like a lot of this like puzzle grid system you've been talking about was inspired by a board game. Can you go a little bit more detail on that kind of thing?
Okay, so the board game inspiration story, a lot of people have asked me. When we do our design stuff, we have various design.
When hardcore players just disconnect at first sight of danger when it comes to being cooperative with a slow moving wall, it doesn't make much sense for it to kill you. It's not punishment for serious hardcore players and really just annoyance for everyone else. Would you say the same about Labyrinth? Where if you're just about to die in Labyrinth, hardcore players log and it's annoyance for everyone else? Would you say the same about Delve? Would you like? Do you think it's just an annoyance? It's also taking off a use of the memory. It's not just logging out and going back for it. Whenever you lose that charge, that statement just doesn't make any sense. So they could easily make it lethal. That would also mean that there's you need to actually put some thought into where you go instead of just like mindlessly going somewhere and not giving a fuck.
Design toys available that are handy, like paper and pencil and whiteboards, and sometimes board game pieces. So we were having this design discussion at Jonathan's house over a barbecue one day near Christmas, and he happened to have a copy of the board game Carcassonne, which is an awesome board game about a French city. And this involves pieces that can connect together. They basically have the connection points on them. And so while we have connection and square pieces go next to each other, that's about as similar as it gets to Carcassonne. We use the pieces to prototype it. So basically we broke out that board game, sorted all the bits out, and took the pieces that were the right shapes for us to do synthesis prototyping. And so that's the connection there. I mean, they happen to connect together, so it's like Carcassonne, but like a 5% comparison.
It's kind of cool.
Was this the most recent Christmas or the previous one?
the most recent one, we haven't even started thinking about what the next expansion is yet. Like this, I mean, we've done a bit.
Okay.
You know, these things are done in a 13-week cycle.
Damn,
Okay.
that's crazy. Okay.
That's a lot faster than I thought it was. One thing I want to say for my net drops again, both this league and the last league had a very narrative-heavy focus. Is that something you're looking to continue with going forward?
We like it because there's a couple of reasons why we like doing the narrative stuff. First thing is the community loves it, right? We get so much good feedback about the story stuff. So that's awesome, right? And it's just kind of like free awesomeness we get. I mean, it's not free, it's very expensive, but it's free from a production point of view. We get good writers, we put them on it, they write awesome stuff, and it doesn't distract the designers. If everything goes well, it doesn't have the n-squared complexity thing you get when everything has to work well together. Like, for example, the visual effects of this decay effect and all those mechanics, that's an n-squared thing. It makes it so much harder to make the league because you have to work alongside visual effects guys and the people doing the decay mechanics, and it's much harder to finesse it to be perfect. But with a good story, that just kind of happens because the writers are awesome. And so it's really nice to be able to just trust that they'll come up with something amazing, and then the league has voice-acted characters and cool stuff to find out about their history, and it furthers the plot of the game. Yeah, I really like that.
Me too.
Just on that note again then, so how did you feel about the successful end of the Betrayal? Because it seemed a lot of people were really into the whole Syndicate board, but then felt the narrative kind of dropped off a little bit at the end there.
It's difficult in these leagues to actually have a final point where the story ends and that was that, and without having a looping aspect to it. It worked well in Incursion because you have the repetitive cyclic nature of it. You get kind of a different story each time. With Betrayal, of course, you do get to see a arc of going through and defeating the mastermind, but then the league necessitates the fact that you have to
the
go
other
through that
character
multiple times.
AFK for me.
So I don't know of how we could have done that better for Betrayal, but we are trying to make sure that there is a compelling arc in the league content.
Though one thing that strikes me though is that you have a game that does sort of have an endpoint at times, and that still works. Like, people still replay the game, they make new characters. So I'm just wondering why that doesn't hold in like a league mechanic.
We may be able to have it that you finish the story of the league and then get to play through it again. It's just that with something like Betrayal, we know in advance you're going to be playing quite a lot of iterations of it. It's definitely designed to be you do your Syndicate, then you want to do it again better now that you know which rewards you have. Like, the first time you get Tiny's Trial or whatever and you decide you want to see it again, you'll certainly be trying to structure it in favor of getting it the second time. And the same thing is true here. If finishing a reward memory was the end of the league, you'd certainly, be seeing that quite a lot of times. Now, we do have stuff that you can get to in Cavus's memories that are a bit more final than others. There's some pretty interesting stuff that happens there that the story-driven people will like, including some, cool boss fights and so on. So I suspect that they'll be quite pleased with that.
I mean,
I really don't care if it's lethal or not. I'm more bothered with the whole concept of Alt F4 at first sight of danger in hardcore. Oh boy. I don't even know where to start, honestly, with that. I probably shouldn't. You do realize that GGG is literally balancing the game around that fact, right? And if they didn't do that, then the other option would be a DC is an immediate killer. No matter what you do, if you DC, you will die. They're basically picking up the lesser evil of two, because you can't really do it right. You have to choose either or, and the only way to really make hardcore work is to do that. But I don't really want to get into the whole that shit. We've gone over it so many times, and it's always the same fucking shit. So it's just
it's not as complicated with this league, right? You can just put a big
or you can. I'm just
screen
gonna
at the end
pass on
you've
that.
done something, and then you redo it again because you forgot about it.
It's similar to the advantage that Incursion had, where you could literally just time travel back to before anything actually happened.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I like the idea of repeatable leagues, and I personally believe that I think there's a lot of scope for simple leagues as well. Like, we've been doing.
Actually, before I end, nobody in hardcore, I mean, obviously someone is because cheating, but you don't actually have an automated script. You have to press the button yourself. That is the only allowed way to do it. Making that clear. Like, you actually have to hit the logout to leave. It's not like your HP goes below 10% and gone. It's not like that. If you get caught doing that, you're just like gone. You're banned.
Well, an incursion, because you have the you have the repetitive cyclic nature of it. You get kind of a different story each time. With Betrayal, of course, you do get to see a arc of going through and defeating the mastermind, but then the League necessitates the fact that you have to be able to do that multiple times. So I don't know of how we could have done that better for Betrayal, but we are trying to make sure that there is a compelling arc in the League content.
Though one thing that strikes me though is that you have a game that does sort of have an endpoint at times, and that still works. Like, people still replay the game, they make new characters. So I'm just wondering why that doesn't hold in like a League mechanic.
We may be able to have it that you like finish the story of the League and then get to play through it again. It's just that with something like Betrayal, we know in advance you're going to be playing quite a lot of iterations of it. Like, it's definitely designed to be you do your Syndicate, then you want to do it again better now that you know which rewards you have. Like, the first time you get Tiny's Trial or whatever and you decide you want to see it again, you'll certainly be trying to structure it in favor of getting that the second time. And the same thing is true here. If finishing a reward memory was the end of the League, you'd certainly, be seeing that quite a lot of times. Now, we do have stuff that you can get to in Cavus's memories that are a bit more final than others. There's some pretty interesting stuff that happens there that the story-driven people will like, including some, cool boss fights and so on. So I suspect that they'll be quite pleased with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not as complicated with this league, right? You can just put a big, just forget about it, lol, screen at the end after you've done something, and then you redo it again because you forgot about it.
It's similar to the advantage that Incursion had, where you could literally just time travel back to before anything actually happened.
Yeah. There you go.
And I like the idea of repeatable leagues, and I'm personally I personally believe that I think there's a lot of scope for simple leagues as well. Like, we've been doing some very conceptually complicated leagues over the last few years, and I'm trying very hard to make sure that they're easy to explain to people, it's less daunting and that kind of stuff, while still making sure we have deep mechanics available. Like, for example, I love the fact that most of you guys here latched onto the fact that there's cool crafting stuff going on here, because that's very hard for the new players to understand. We have to say story stuff for the new players, look at the synthesis mechanics, it's fun to play, and then hope that the community notices there's some nuts crafting stuff going on in the background. Because if we put that as the forefront of our marketing material, it just turns people off.
Has there been any clarification on how Blessed Orbs work with all of this stuff when it comes to the implicits?
We try very hard to make sure the Path of Exile mechanics do work together, so yes, I believe they will re-roll those implicits and let you change the values on them.
Oh, nice. Okay. One thing on the mechanics and the synthesis, how do you determine the actual level of the zone?
So when you're playing through the game, and let's say you're in a level 40 area and you get a fragment, that's going to be a level 40 fragment that's placed down. Now, of course, this means when you're playing through the game, they'll lag slightly behind you, but of course they're harder than normal, so it works out relatively well. And then in maps, of course, things flatten off quite a lot. You get the level of the map you're playing. So this means if you want high-level rewards and good uniques and so on, it's probably better to chain higher level areas together if you can do.
Okay, so it's not like you'll have a +6 or whatever it was from Incursion to your current, to your zone that you would run. Like, so you could run, I don't know, 70 maps and then 183, and you would end up with a complete 83 zone. So you'd have to run multiple high level maps to keep it rolling.
It's our goal that people are playing the hardest map content they can in order to get the best rewards from the league. And this was evidenced strongly with Delve when there was all that drama about the fact that we want you to be playing super high level maps to get the best sulphite games.
Betrayal.
And we were kind of punitive towards players that dropped down a few map levels. Having said that, this stuff is what we do in the last week of the league development, is actually get a chance to fully playtest to consider all the abuse cases. So I suspect that the exact finessing of these level numbers is going to change tons from today before release. And they may even change afterwards. But philosophically, we want you to play high maps.
So the eye level of the floating reward islands is what I think you referred to them. That is determined by the content that you're running, or how is that generated?
The exact level generator for the rewards themselves is honestly, I have to check that. I haven't seen how that's generated. I know how the ones you get from maps are.
I didn't mean to ambush you with that.
Oh, that's okay. I should know, but that will be tomorrow.
Well, another podcast tomorrow then.
Balance Sunday.
Wait, is that a thing?
It is close to release.
I can imagine it being an actual thing. Okay.
One thing I did want to ask though, since you've said yourself you've been focusing a lot more on these like more complex leagues, but you still want to have the simple ones, is it intentional that Abyss was really the last like non-player agency league, and every league since then has been very choice focused for the player?
Well, I think the leagues after that point have been the tier 3 leagues, as it were. Like, Talisman was the first Generation 2 league, and Mystery was the first Generation 3. And, I like Generation 3 leagues. They take a lot of development effort. I'm just hoping we can present them in a as simple as possible way so that they really resonate with players. I worried Synthesis was too complicated, right? I was very worried about the community reaction because I love the league and know it's good, but I was concerned that people might say, wow, this is so complicated, I can't deal with it. But thankfully, people have been very, very understanding and are willing to explore it, which is totally awesome.
Yeah, I think actually the mechanic has a really intuitive base to it. Like, there's a lot of specific questions that we've been digging into here that, like how is eye level determined and what happens with global mods and all that. But as far as how it actually works, it's quite literally putting puzzle.
It's really up for the Chris when he talk about content difficulty and delve. To be fair, if you want the highest rewards, not when I'm talking about highest rewards, I'm not necessarily talking about the best money per hour, even though it is true still. The best way to make money out of delve is to have a character that can do very high depths or like very deep delves, because that's where all the fucking crazy nodes are. So you actually, especially in softcore, not so much in hardcore, I guess, but in softcore, because there's so much rare shit in there, and they really start spawning very late. Obviously, that doesn't mean that you can't do the easy content and make a lot of money, which I think is kind of an issue with delve, honestly, but yeah.
Pieces together. Tons of questions that we've been digging into here that, like how is eye level determined and what happens with global mods and all that. But as far as how it actually works, it's quite literally putting puzzle pieces together.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, that's intuitive. That's understandable. When we were putting together the doc for this episode, it was like a little tough to come up with some overarching questions about the league because we just kind of it looked pretty intuitive and understandable.
So I have a question for you. There are 4 ways to disseminate information on announcement day, right? Number 1 is the trailer. Number 2 is the developer commentary thing.
Go back a bit.
Understandable.
So I
just kind of it looked pretty intuitive and understandable.
So I have a question for you. There are 4 ways that we disseminate information on announcement day, right? Number 1 is the trailer. Number 2 is the developer commentary thing that's after the trailer, which goes into a bit more detail. Number 3 is the announcement page, which has those sections and a few words. And number 4 is Ziggy's video. How do you rate these? Like, where do you get your information about the league? Are there any of those you completely ignored? Like, what's working here? Do we need to do the developer commentary? Is it critical? What?
Before anyone else, my rating for those 4. So we have the announcement page, we have the Ziggy video, we have the trailer, and then we have the dev commentary. So from bottom, so the worst one is the trailer. It has the least amount of like actual information, in my opinion. It just shows like all the shiny shit and all that good, well, kind of what it is supposed to. And then we have the announcement page. I guess it depends a bit, but I feel like the announcement page is the second lowest, because again, it just, without going into any kind of detail on anything, it doesn't really explain how the league itself works. And it just basically just shows like uniques, potential divo cards, etc., etc. Then we have the dev commentary, because in that you there's like a kind of explaining how the shit works a bit, and then obviously the Ziggy, because Ziggy like goes a bit more in depth on how the shit works.
What's happening?
Yes, you need to do that.
Nerds.
Yeah, I think that might be a question that, like, if chat were a little easier to parse, would be better capable of answering, because we have all poured over every detail of everything you guys have said.
They're just spamming Ziggy.
Yeah,
exactly.
probably Ziggy's video has the most reach to an audience that isn't as
Ziggy is the most explanatory, right, of the whole
Wait,
of the
nobody's
concept.
spamming IGN? Oh no.
Right. Well, we try to give him the right information there. We've been involving Ziggy in the press tour, so he sees what the other external journalists see, and then gets time to look at our actual like complicated notes of how it works and get videos in advance and make sure that he's explaining it clearly. And then he has opportunities to fact check with us and put together a video. And we don't have to approve his video or anything. He can put what he wants in there, but it seems to do a good job of teaching people how the league works.
Yeah, it's good.
On a personal note, the nostalgia of hearing you narrate the league, the upcoming league, is something I enjoy every league.
Yeah.
So that's something
I think I
would.
should add this is Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games at the start. We cut that for time.
No.
Whoa.
I mean, yeah, why not?
No problem.
Well, I'm happy to narrate it. I still love making sure that this stuff happens. And while most of my day is yelling at people to get stuff done faster, I do make sure that I'm fully involved in the league design stuff.
When I think Chris mentioned somewhere that now that the like Tencent is taking like kind of like the ownership like that, he doesn't have to be like the PR guy / CEO as much anymore, so he can actually go back to the game. So I really hope we get them more into. I mean, he kind of already did better now than he did in. I don't remember what Baeclast. I think it was a Baeclast, or maybe it was a Ziz interview. I'm not exactly sure which one it was. But he just at the time felt like he didn't really know much about the game at that time. Already like 20 minutes, 30 minutes in, it feels like he knows a lot more now.
One thing I'll just quickly say on that note, it does seem that probably 90% of the information does kind of just come from the official page and then the Ziggy video. A lot of the articles tend to just feel like the same thing written 6 different ways, which is already better explained than the other things. So
I hate the articles, dude.
How well you think the articles work from your point of view?
The articles are useful for our community for validation. The game exists outside of their bubble, if you see what I mean. But the primary purpose of involving the journalists is that they have an audience there of people who have, see Path of Exile stuff occasionally and may be interested in trying it out. So it's just about more exposure. And it's a relatively low effort thing to do those press tours. Like, we don't travel to the States to do it anymore. When I go on the press tour, it means hiding in my office for a week and a half and doing Skype calls all day and talking to 30 or so journalists. And that's very important because this is done before we prepare the marketing page, before we talk to Ziggy, and it really helps me get a good way of explaining the league. Like, the first few journalist explanations are confused and terrible, and then by then I know what I'm doing to explain it, and then can put it together really clearly when structuring the developer commentary thing for the trailer so that you guys get a good explanation of how the league works.
Yeah,
if it's like a class full of people, is there something where you pretty much announce like a very in-depth mechanic and just nobody gets it? It's something that you have to translate through like Ziggy's videos.
It's always a one-on-one thing with the journalists. Like, I call them and I specifically explain stuff, and we tailor it. Like, I say to them, how much Path of Exile have you played? And there are some journalists there that play through the maps, killed Shaper and everything, and that's great, because for them, I can just use normal PoE terminology. For others, I have to explain the benefits of an action RPG, why we've got random levels, what an implicit mod is. Like, I really wanted the journalists to understand the full synthesized item stuff. So I made diagrams showing the history of implicit mods in Path of Exile, how Val corruption works, all the different options available, what makes a ruby ring different than gold ring, and got them to understand it. And then they wrote it up, and it's exciting.
Can I get a copy of that diagram? I want that. That sounds really good.
Oh my god. I can just imagine the guy who doesn't play the game at all and you're trying to explain all the stuff to him, his brain's just exploding.
I love the fact that journalists who haven't played our game are interested in covering it, right? This is awesome. It wasn't possible a few years ago to get journalists really particularly interested, and now they'll hop on a Skype call and hear all about it, and that's really cool.
On the note of some of the heaviest stuff with Synthesis this league, what's the philosophy between dropped items and all these special new like league crafted items? Because it seems to be very favored in one way of recent history.
So, can you clarify the question there? What's the relationship between the...
Yeah, so where does GGG view the value of a dropped item versus a crafted item?
Right, I see. This is actually one of the reasons why you can't chance synthesized base types to get synthesized versions of those specific uniques, because we want to make sure that dropped items can still be the best uniques in the game, which is going to be a super unpopular opinion because everyone wants crazy synthesized uniques, but there'll be room for that in future expansions. This is about rares and rare crafting. And we value the regular crafting process, and this is making some really good base types. And I agree, if you're looking for the best rare in the game, it's probably not one you're picking up off the ground, but then it probably wasn't already, right? Like it was already in a situation where crafting made the best rares in the game more easily. Having said that, it's still worth picking up rares, and we do want in future expansions to continue to make that valuable. It's just that the pendulum has swung slightly towards rare crafting to make rares in this particular expansion.
So there's a hope then to implement, I mean, obviously it's very ethereal off in the future, but there is a concern about this and a hope to maybe implement some means by which dropped rares might be a more legitimate source of powerful items.
Oh, for sure, for sure. One of the things I dislike about current Path of Exile is that there's so many rares on the ground, or so many everything on the ground, and you just have to kind of wade through it, and you're getting so much good stuff from trade that there is no way that you're going to ever pick up a rare that's going to be better than what you get from trade. And I would very much like it if things were significantly harder to find. I think that would take it back to a much better experience for players, but it's not the kind of thing we can easily change, and we don't have an intention of changing this particularly quickly, right? Like 4.0 is on the horizon, we'll have a few changes in there, we're eking towards it in various other expansions, but we can't rip the band-aid off and go, oh, by the way, we cut drop rates by 70%, have fun with that, because then, it's going to feel like a totally different game. So we want it to... Currently, people play leagues, and they get a lot of enjoyment out of them, and people stick around for whatever they want to out of the 3 months. But a lot of players are only playing for a few weeks out of those 3 months, and I would love it if there was just months and months of progress to do in each league, and that comes down to the item game. Trade makes it fast, crafting makes it fast. They're both really fun. I don't want to reduce either, but I still want to make sure that has more legs to it.
Was the dropped items mentality something that you guys have had for a long time, or maybe this was a conclusion after Delve, having seen...
I'll rewind back to when I started, but about those drop items, I don't know, this is just like, brainstorm, but what about... Okay, well, obviously, I don't think you can do it for, like, random drops, but, like, for example, let's say that you fight a boss or something like that, or a fucking map boss or something like that, and they would just have a higher chance, or in some cases, in, like, some, like, boss fight, for example, a guaranteed chance to drop with literally T1 mods in some, if not even all, modifiers on the mods you get. So for example, let's say that you drop a helm that literally has just T1 mods. Obviously the mods would be random, but that could be something, especially because you could potentially annul some of them and then just craft them further. I don't know.
Had for
more legs to it.
Was the dropped items mentality something that you guys have had for a long time, or maybe this was a conclusion after Delve, having seen, pretty much nothing ever dropping good, but everybody just using fossils to craft all the best items?
Part of this is that we want to keep the game interesting by putting new itemization mechanics in there, which often means new crafting methods. Like, we do want to keep pushing the boundaries for this. So there's this inevitable slight creep which occurs over time, and we'll just have to make sure we correct for it correctly.
Okay.
So in terms of items and increasing like their power over, like every time you introduce, say like a new implicit, a new crafting option, you also increase the power, even from like the early stage of the game. So in terms of, I'm kind of wondering when you're saying you want players to have more of a progression, but you're it feels to me every time you're increasing the power we get, even from an early stage, everything like progresses just a lot faster.
Yeah, he's contradicting
a lot of these power increases in these expansions are relatively subtle for the average player. Like, for example, here, these crazy implicits that you're capable of getting. So that requires, A, working out how to get those implicits. This isn't obvious. B...
Oh, so that's not random. I mean, damn, okay. So... Okay, there's probably some randomness to it. I wonder how much.
Getting the fractured items of the right type and the right levels and all the right various bits and pieces you have to work out in order to roll that implicit, and then getting the good implicit, blessed orbing it until it's high, on the right base type, which is tricky, and then crafting it using all the regular stuff. You know, I mean, turning a white item into a good rare is a bit of a process. So the power creep of those implicits isn't meaning that the average dude playing through the game is 10% more efficient. Ditto with like the double corruption outcomes in Incursion and so on. They weren't just handed out for free. You had to know exactly what you were doing, take a big risk on a unique or valuable rare. And so we try where possible to make sure that the item power creep is kind of theoretical power creep. It certainly affects the best items in the game for sure. And a lot of good players are going to get a lot of good items from it. But we're trying hard to not just go, it's a new expansion, it's 25% more damage for everyone.
So the goal then is to push the top end without too heavily influencing the bottom or middle end of it, so that people have more room to keep playing, but aren't going to burn out more quickly by more rapidly progressing through content.
Okay, so about that, so basically what Tavian is saying that, or proposing or whatever, that because there's item upgrades to be had, people want to get them, but in order to want to get the item upgrades, you kind of have, in most cases, you kind of have to have something where you need it, right? Because let's assume that just like imagine 100% as in the absolute mirror tier, you know, the best in slot fucking item, you know, and then like 40% being kind of like the average is that it's kind of easy to get. Why would people want to go over like 60% to 80 to whatever when they only need like 50% to already do all the content in the game? It's just like, other than just min-maxing the character, but it just gets exponentially more expensive, so there's no reason to do it, especially in a temp league, unless you're like Dan, who does it because he pushes Delve and shit like that. But for the general player base, it doesn't, you know, you kind of want to have something as a reason to go for it.
More options available for having aspirationally good items at the end game. We want it so that there are lots of cool possibilities that you can try out, and you'll make some awesome stuff in each league, and then ideally in the next league you'll make stuff that's awesome in a different direction. And then in Standard you get to combine all of these together and make some pretty broken stuff.
Is there content planned for Synthesis, or maybe plans, some, you know, slightly less firm plans down the road to make more content that's going to challenge that sort of top end? Because currently it's really...
There he goes. Literally just starts asking about the thing that I just brought.
Super deep delve, and compared to super deep delve, the rest of the game is made out of tissue paper.
Yeah, this is a concern, and we are careful to try to address it. But we have to be careful. Delve took a lot of work to get that incredibly deep content there. Obviously, there's hard stuff in Synthesis, and we try to push the boundaries, but most of the thing that's pushing the incredible in-game challenge is future expansions we have planned that are quite meaningful. Like 4.0 is a great opportunity for us to take a step back and look at the overall challenger path of Exile and make relatively large tweaks to that. And we have at least one expansion between now and then that's also going to push some boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is very good to hear.
Would the like very high difficulty of, for example, Syndicate encounters be like an inkling of where you'd want the game to go more towards?
Sorry, with the very difficult Synthesis encounters, could you repeat the rest?
With the high difficulty, is that kind of more the direction you want PoE to go into?
Of Syndicate encounters, I think.
Yes. Oh, the Syndicate encounters. I don't know if we would say that. I mean, the Syndicate encounters certainly could have some, you know, they certainly have some numerical difficulty to them in places, but I think a lot of the difficulty people perceived was related to the amount of effects and stuff happening at the same time. And I'm not sure that the direction the design team wants is difficulty through spam. I think that was more a consequence of how those fights ended up.
You put your hand up, Nuggy. It looked like you were going to...
No, that's for chat, just to calm everyone down. It's okay. I was just turning, I was turning you up, Tarky. People are complaining that you're a little bit low.
Oh, sorry.
So I just put you up to max.
Oh, thank you. So
Thank you, Nugget.
before we move off Synthesis, do you guys have any more questions about it before we get into more general
Yeah,
discussion?
it's literally on the 8th, I think. Or 7th, whatever the day was.
No, I think that about
Next
covers
Friday.
my curiosity for the moment.
Okay. Big one that I got spammed constantly for weeks. The community has heard you're hoping to address melee in 3.7. Do 3.6 patch notes have any cursory changes to melee skills to hold people over until then?
I honestly have not even looked at whether the 3.6 patch notes contain melee changes. I have the document. I can find out in 5 minutes by reading quickly, but I haven't looked yet. And I suspect that it's entirely possible that the guys will have made some small changes. Right? If they want to, they're welcome to. We haven't said don't change melee. It's just we've said in 3.7.0, make all the melee changes the community wants, and they've said yes, sir, and it's going to be awesome. So I don't know what's in the patch notes. I should have checked, but I kind of like not being able to answer that, to be honest. We've done... Okay, so there was a thing last year where the community said you should change ascendancy classes and redo them, and we thought, great, we'll do this. How long is it going to take? 4 months. Okay, so we scheduled this for whatever, I think it was 3.3 or 2, the bestiary one, I think. And so we got to work on that, and then we announced our next expansion, and of course the ascendancy changes aren't in there, and the community freaked out. We're like, but we are doing it, it's in the next one, so we make the promise. So along comes the small changes we made to nerfing stat sticks and so on in Betrayal, and the community said, oi, you've got to fix all of handcasting, there's so much spellcasting stuff that's...
Nerfing stat sticks for melee / physical based scaling, and then introducing 2 completely fucking busted non-chaos as extra chaos mods on crafting that you can do on every single item doesn't sound... Just, you just put things into perspective here. Like, I didn't know what was going on with their heads with that one. I'm glad they are getting them out into most likely being like Elder or Shaber mods now, but god damn, dude.
It's wrong. And we looked at the feedback and said, okay, you're completely right. This is terrible. We have to fix all the spellcasting stuff. So we got to work, and we've been working on it. And then halfway through the league, the community started going berserker. Look at these problems with melee. And we're looking at this going, we can just tell that when we announce the spellcasting changes, they're going to have forgotten they asked for this. And instead it's going to be, we've been asking for melee for months, where is that? So we decided, do we change tack halfway through, throw away half the spellcasting stuff, and just do quick knee-jerk reaction fixes to the berserker? Well, of course we wouldn't, right? So we doubled down on making the spellcasting stuff thorough and do a good job of it, and left most of the melee stuff to 3.7. But this means we're working on melee for 3.7, so don't expect any more, please.
What I've been saying to my chat whenever this comes up is that the development cycle is a lot slower than the complaint cycle.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
GGG, you guys are always going to be working like a step behind what people are having problems with, because people will be playing on live, and so they'll be having problems that seem very obvious to them at the moment, but that's the sort of thing that needs some time to fix, and then that time happens, it gets fixed, and you got to work on the next thing that they're complaining about.
Yes, that's correct. And the team do have a lot of balance stuff change. And there's a lot of stuff we try and then we back out of, right? There have been weird changes to the balance where we've looked at that and said, everyone is just going to be
people
angry
have been
and there's no
bitching more
upside,
about
and then you
self-casting
reverted it and you
than
didn't hear
melee,
anything
in my
about it.
opinion, over the time.
Do you have any examples of that, maybe? That sounds very interesting.
I'm not going to give any examples of that.
Aw,
There have been some weird
Wait, I
changes.
missed
And I love
how many runs do you need to actually solve a layout? Entirely depends on the layout. I have like over 100 pixels of the upper prison, and at the same, and then for like something like Wild City, you basically just need like the 15 or something like that. But like right now, I'm not really like actively trying to solve it. I'm just taking the screenshots. I'll do it later. I'm trying to focus on the podcast.
the
Very interesting.
to that stuff change. And there's a lot of stuff we try and then we back out of, right? There have been weird changes to the balance where we've looked at that and said, everyone is just going to be angry and there's no upside. And then we reverted it and you guys didn't hear a thing about it.
Do you have any examples of that, maybe? That sounds very interesting.
I'm not going to give any examples of that. Weird experimental changes. And I love the fact that there are weird experimental changes. It's just if it's bad, we'll get rid of it. Like, there's a story that I repeat so often that people are angry about how Marvel Heroes one day decided that the incredible clear speed meta they had needed to end, and so they put cooldowns on all the attack spells, and now that's not a game anymore. And we're not going to repeat that mistake, right? We don't immediately, like, as much as we want to fix certain things, we can't just turn something off.
Yeah.
And because the game won't exist after that. And so we have to be very careful to work correctly in the right direction and make changes the community are going to understand and agree with and signal them correctly. And, you know, there's things we've done in the past, like cast on crit changes, where it blindsided the community and they reacted very strongly to that. And we don't want that to happen again. We want it to be a dialogue where you guys kind of know what's coming and you agree with the manifestos we post and everyone agrees the game's going in the right direction. That's the goal with these changes.
I think it was fine. It made
So one
I think
thing,
the manifestos
Bake Chicken,
and also please keep doing them because
Bake himself out of the game with that change.
So much better.
God, I remember that. That was so enjoyable seeing him rage.
one thing I'm wondering is there a reason why you complete? Like, so in the past you had pretty much, I mean we're talking years ago. I think like pretty much every patch you could expect a decent amount of changes to most skills, right? That there would be numerical changes, there would be something that you could expect it for pretty much anyone. So I'm wondering, since variety, like there's such a huge variety of players within PoE. There's the melee players, the spellcasters. There's the. I'm wondering why you hold something off for leagues at a time, and it doesn't really always feel like you have, what's it called? I don't know, like just small changes for like everyone on a balanced note. Right? For instance, right now with the melee.
So part of it is that we've kind of done all of the small changes that we were able to make in the past, right? Like I made Glacial Hammer do 6% more damage, and I've been mocked to this day about that, but that was deemed to be the small change that was necessary for that particular skill. And so we have a list of all the skills left in the game and what we want to change, and in each case it's like redo the skill to work like X. Basically, we've hit the limit where in order to actually fix it, we have to go and redo the skill. And that's why we started doing skill reworks. And the skill reworks were great, but they only focus on a few things, and so we've taken a step back, and we're doing spellcasting as one holistic set.
Sorry, I'm gonna answer the question. So if you have something that is an 8-second duration that can be modified by temporal chains, an example of this that you cannot modify is focus. You cannot alter the duration of the focus at all. But for example, something like Blade Vortex, so you can quadruple the duration. So if you have a 10-second duration on Blade Vortex, if you get high enough temp chains effect, I don't remember exactly what the number is, like curse effect, but once you, so wait, what's the base? Base is like 40%, right? And then it has 40% reduction on players, right? Was that the temp chains? I don't exactly remember the numbers, but you need to get enough curse effect so that the 40% base after the 40% reduction gets to 75%, and then you get 4 times the duration. Like it's pretty simple math. Just if you have 75% like a slowered expiration of buffs through temp chains, that means 4 times the duration. 50% reduced is like you know, twice the duration, you know. So you just do the math for that, and then you if you have 40% curse effect on temp, like you know, just 40% temp, like a curse effect that affects temp chains, then you'll have 40% because the base is 40%, if I remember correctly the numbers. And then you just go up from there until you hit the 75, and that's it.
So in the past you had pretty much, I mean we're talking years ago. I think like pretty much every patch you could expect a decent amount of changes to most skills, right? That there would be numerical changes, there would be something that you could expect it for pretty much anyone. So I'm wondering, since the variety, like there's such a huge variety of players within PoE. There's the melee players, the spellcasters, there's the I'm wondering why you hold something off for leagues at a time, and it doesn't really always feel like you have, what's it called? I don't know, like just small changes for like everyone on a balanced note. Like for instance, right now with the melee.
So part of it is that we've kind of done all of the small changes that we were able to make in the past, right? Like I made Glacial Hammer do 6% more damage, and I've been mocked to this day about that, but that was deemed to be the small change that was necessary for that particular skill. And so we have a list of all the skills left in the game and what we want to change, and in each case it's like redo the skill to work like X. Basically, we've hit the limit where in order to actually fix it, we have to go and redo the skill. And that's why we started doing skill reworks. And the skill reworks were great, but they only focus on a few things. And so we've taken a step back, and we're doing spellcasting as one holistic set of changes, and we'll do the same for various melee things. I'd love the team to get more time to tweak other stuff as well. Like merely saying, hey, traps might be weak, let's make them awesome. I mean, that may not be the case, but the concept of just like a small tweak that opens up tons of builds will be amazing in each patch if we can. But the team is limited. As the game gets more complicated, it requires so much more testing for the stuff. It interacts so differently with all the different uniques and other skills in the game that a lot of changes get made, and then we realize it was scary and terrible, and we have to turn them off.
So with the last few leagues, how you've also had these like mini focuses, like you'll focus on more rework traps or rework self-cast, but we're also seeing now like this holy and chaos theme. Is that just an extension of that? By setting these themes, you can more easily focus on one thing to develop at a time?
So the Holy and Chaos thing are the two archetypes we're doing here. And the concept behind archetypes is they are kind of builds that we're recommending to players if they're looking for something relatively good that's straightforward and has kind of a sign pointing at it. So the intention is the average Path of Exile returning player would come back to the game and go, I know I like Path of Exile, I know I want to play this content, but man, looking up all those build guides and trying to work out what the best build is, like I hear feedback that like they find a build that sounds awesome and then they work out it's not a league starter build and you need 18 exalts of gear to play it and that kind of stuff. It's quite hard. So the concept with our archetypes, which we actually started a few leagues ago, we just weren't advertising it as heavily, I guess, is that these are things where we say to new players, this is a completely capable build that uses new content and is enjoyable, and we've kind of vouched for it. It's not going to be the best build in the game, but it's fun and you can have a shot and it's on theme with the recent changes and it uses new skills. And I mean, like, for example, the Chinese realm has completely embraced this archetypes concept and they put a ton of marketing in their copy. Like I don't know what they've got on the site at the moment, but in the past they've had it so you go there and it literally shows 3 cool pieces of art for the archetypes going, these are the 3 character types you get to play in this expansion, because they wanted to bring in a lot of new users evocatively off those things. Now, we haven't done the marketing in the same way to our community. We kind of just say, these are some new skills, work it out. But the archetypes are certainly there to kind of give an idea for a build to new players.
It's something to latch on to, because it can be difficult as a newer player getting into the game to have that sort of thing.
I really dislike the archetypes as a concept because of how they make them. They do these massive changes to ascendancy classes and give skill specific like ascendancy nodes. I really dislike that personally. Like, I mean, okay, something like, Spectre Life or shit like that, it's a bit different. But something like a cooldown reduction of Blink Arrow, cooldown reduction of Convocation and shit like that, is like, I don't know, dude. Yeah, I'm getting a cup of coffee and take a piss. I'll be back in a couple minutes. Okay, back. And before I continue, let me go back to the archetype thing. So, imagine having Chieftain. Like, imagine Chieftain having an ascendancy node, which would be your Molten Strike has 2 additional projectiles, something like that. That is like so extremely specific. Which we could just have as a threshold jewel. Right, I mean the Molten Strike would be extremely thematic to the Chieftain, because it is a fire-based from physical. It has the conversion. It's fire damage. So it is like, it's extremely thematic, but it's just, I just really dislike the so skill specific thing. Right? Something like reduced reservation of heralds is fine, I think, because that's just not one herald, right? But like you could have these as like well, not the specific of like the reduced reservation, but like the cooldown reduction of blink arrow and convocation could actually be like threshold jewels, for example. I mean, you could argue that it's mandatory to use them, but then again, there are people playing summoners that are not necromancers. There are people playing bow builds that are not Deadeye, and having the blink arrow cooldown reduction would open up the blink arrow summoner to a lot of other classes too, for example. So I just feel like we would have more options if it was a duel instead. As an example, it doesn't have to be, but just, you know. I just really dislike the fact that they are in the fucking ascendancy trees.
You know, very often the advice I'll give to a newer player who shows up is to just ignore like class selection as your character that you're choosing, and instead go look up a skill and look at videos and see what skill looks the most fun, and then choose your class as a result of that. Mm-hmm. Like, the game can be difficult to approach if you're not doing third-party stuff, because I don't know, you don't play Marauder in Path of Exile. You play, you know, Juggernaut, Molten Strike, or whatever. And so giving players a archetype to play, something that they can click on and say, this is my character, that does make a lot of sense to pull in people from outside the game. But
I don't think it fits the Path of Exile that we've been marketed, and I mean, obviously opinions and views can change. I just feels like it goes so much against the core of what Path of Exile is.
Certainly. And in this case, play any holy spell, throw them on your character, and you'll kill some monsters. Ditto with the chaos stuff, combining with the old chaos stuff. They're things that we're kind of vouching as strong.
The one worry, the one concern that I would see expressed about this direction, though, is that some of the skills that are designed for these archetypes would then maybe not be as competitive necessarily for like real min-maxing in the endgame if they're more simplistic skills and if they don't have as much in the way of potential scaling.
The good news is,
yeah, there's of course there's a chance that I could visit Grim Dawn. It's a really good game. The question is just, I don't know if and when I would have the time to do it for once. And like I just have so many games to play already that I don't, you know, like me buying a game, for example, like to me it feels kind of, I don't know what the word here is. I don't want to say useless because that's not the word, but counterproductive. No, that's not the word either. I can't think of a word here, but when there's so many things that I know that I will play, BOD, PoE, mainly, obviously, that I don't know if I can justify buying it myself, because I know that I might not have the time to give all like give it as much attention as I want to. I guess it's the way I would say it. Like, I haven't actually paid a single dime on Grim Dawn. I have Grim Dawn and I have the expansion, the Necromancer pack or whatever. I don't remember the exact name, because they were gifted to me. So, like, I will definitely play it if somebody is generous enough to gift it for me, but I don't know if I'm willing to do the investment myself, I guess.
So the designers who work out the skills are often different people than those who work with archetypes are being promoted. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, the skills guys care so much about skills being good at the beginning and the end of the game.
Also,
all they talk about. They spend so much time on this. I think it'll be okay. Honestly, like, Soul Rend is a great example. It's a super simple chaos skill compared to a lot of them, but it's very viable in Endgame from what we can sort of see from our QA testing. And this is the kind of comment that bites me in 2 weeks' time, where people say, so tell me about that, Chris. But so far, Will is looking good.
Like,
that's the thing. What do you really tell in Path of Exile the average player who just gets into it? Because in other games, it's very simple, right? Like, hey, I've got this friend that wants to play the game, and he likes a warrior. But in Path of Exile, you can't really just go, well, yeah, just play a warrior or a mage. There's not really anything like that. Is there like a ballpark from your guys' perspective, what you would like to see in terms of skills that players new to the game select? Or is it just like, let them do whatever and that's the enjoyment?
Path of Exile is kind of about forging your own identity. As long as they're around trap skills, I mean trap skills from the point of view of they're bad to pick, like noob traps, as opposed to like traps and mines. As long as they're around noob trap skills, which was the case with a lot of spells before, I'm okay with them picking whatever. Like, I'm not expecting people to get to Shaper on their first character, and I think if they are angry with the game because they can't do everything on their first character, they're not going to have the long-term stamina to play Path of Exile over a number of leagues. So I like people exploring, and I advise people, rather than play this build, it's good. I advise people just play whatever you feel like for as long as you feel like, and then when you realize you're ready for it, start looking at build guides, at least be able to read them by that point.
With that being said, from the new handcasting rework, what spells are you personally most excited for, just from like a player point of view?
I am excited about the fact that there's no guide online that's going to tell me that blah, blah, blah is the right choice, and if I don't use that, I'm wrong. It means I can load the game client to see what spell attracts me on that day and hopefully have a good time with it. And that's the joy of having had such an extensive rework to it, is that it's going to be a while before players work out. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some best skills in there still. Hopefully, they'll be less far ahead, but it's all mixed up. And that time of uncertainty is going to see prosperity in the build community.
Nice. You're primarily a melee player, right? Yourself?
Traditionally online, yeah, but I try to make sure that I see a variety of characters in our internal test builds.
Of course.
On the note of like kind of shifting metas and stuff, you've spoken before on Baeclast about how you're not super happy with the state of movement, and we've seen lots of like small gradual changes to movement going forward. I'm just curious, like the current state of movement skills, how close is that to your like ideal vision?
I don't think there are big changes to movement happening in the near future that I'm aware of. Like no one's surfaced that as a thing. Aware of, at least. The designers may have ideas that they haven't fully run past us, so there may be changes coming, but I'm not aware of any big plan to wreck movement. Personally, I was happy with our previous philosophy that movement skills are meant to be situationally useful. Like Lightning Walk, for example, moving you at the speed that you run at was a completely intentional thing so that people don't just spam teleport across the map like they did in D2 with Enigma. Like, as far as we're concerned, we will avoid having that in the game. Now, since then, of course, players have been smart, and they've worked out if you take Lightning Walk with less duration and various other things, you can actually use it as a travel skill. And so other skills have had to be improved over time to match that, and you see people leap slamming across the map. I don't think it's in a problem situation at the moment. I don't think that we're getting to the point where movement skills are dominating and wrecking the game like has happened in a few other games. But, keeping an eye on it.
Probably the opposite, to be honest. Movement skills seemed really dominant in the past, and you did a really good job at kind of scaling them down by scaling everything up, and it's in a pretty decent spot, I think.
I'm glad you feel that way. That's really good news.
What I would be thinking is, do you have any plans on the horizon of new movement skills?
There are always new skills coming out. And it's hard to know what's on the horizon to new skills because the team work on so many different prototypes, right? Like right now, there's crazy skills being experimented on. Half of them will never make it through prototyping. It's impossible to really know what's going to be real and what's just, a failed experiment. But yeah, there's of course new movement skills in the pipeline. I just don't know when we'll see them. Might be a league, might be a year.
Okay. You've kind of already answered it, but with movement, we had this very slow, gradual change of small changes of the last few patches. When do you think that slow, gradual changes are warranted over complete reworks like we've seen with handcasting?
It kind of depends on the confidence that the complete rework's going to be better for it. Like with handcasting, we're not expecting players to grumble that their favorite skill has been slightly nerfed because I don't think there are particularly large nerfs going on there. I guess it's because they haven't seen the balance manifesto yet, which is a positive one, I should add. Everything's getting buffed. It's awesome. But we want to make sure with large revamps that basically the game is in a much better state and it's indisputable, and even if someone is getting nerfed, they'll understand why that's the case. Whereas with gradual stuff, we're being very careful. Like there's things where
I promise you, the chat was spamming undisputed right after he said that.
We want revamps that basically the game is in a much better state and it's indisputable, and even if someone is getting nerfed, they'll understand why that's the case. Whereas with gradual stuff, we're being very careful. Like there's things where we want to turn them down to a certain level, we'll do it over a few patches because it's still going to be strong all the way down.
Just real quick, Chris, which animal are you on the Google Doc?
That's a good question.
You're not the kangaroo, right? That would be
the pressing questions of our time.
I saw the kangaroo and I was like, that would be actually really messed up. Okay.
Yeah,
wait, so
I'm
which
not going to be a kangaroo. I think I am the kangaroo, but I don't want to.
What? Is that personally offensive? Oh my goodness.
There are no kangaroos in this country.
Yeah,
and
that's
the
the point.
Topic being brought up is part of the reason why it's offensive.
Damn. Okay. Got it.
Thank you for that beautiful insight, Rise. Before we move into more general Path of Exile questions, is there anything on the terms of balance or animals that you guys still want to talk about?
I have a question. So on the whole theme thing and the archetypes, how do you feel that PoE has the direction has moved to more creating certain packages for people rather than what the game started out being with? You have a skill and then you create something around it, right?
Here's a sandbox, do whatever you want. And now it's here's a sandbox and here's molds for you that we made for you to help you because the sandbox is too hard or something like that. I kind of feel like it's the case.
Right, the GMP fork fireball, right? The whole create your own skill. It seems to me that the game or your design philosophy has more gone into creating packages for people that are easy to kind of digest.
Well, there's a couple of things here. The first one is the game already has that we've had for years, right? There's hundreds of these gems already in place. Yeah. They're still all there and hopefully good. But the other thing is it's why when you're buying Lego, you buy it in sets that make a specific thing rather than just buying a random bin of random pieces, right? Obviously you use your Lego pieces to make all sorts of cool models of your own design, but they often come in existing sets. And this is partly from a marketing point of view, right? If we can package something nicely, it's adding the same content to the game still, so the game is improved just as much, and more marketing helps the game spread. And we have to put effort into that because there's a constant attention attrition going on with games these days. You have to be interesting, you have to have good marketing, otherwise the game will gradually become less popular. And we've been doing a good job over the last few years, and part of that is the fact it's being packaged up more appropriately for new users. And PoE is gradually becoming a bit more mainstream as more people are there to help their friends. And this is good for everyone. It means the game makes more money, and there's more. You see the size of the leagues we're releasing every 13 weeks now. That's possible because the game's become slightly more mainstream. And my main role is making sure it doesn't become too mainstream to the point where it loses its identity. So I will make sure that I promise you guys that it will retain its hardcoreness.
Okay. I understand his point of view, but if I had the chance to reply back to that, I would go back to the fact that you're changing the pieces, the Lego pieces already existing in the game to fit those, like in this case, ascendancy node, right? You're changing those so drastically that it feels like if you want to do a certain thing with your Lego pieces, you have to use those few key pieces. Otherwise, it's not really worthwhile. Now, obviously, you can argue that you don't have to be a necromancer, but the fucking Convocation is just so insane. The cooldown of Convocation is just insane. If you like, there's just so many things that are so. Fuck, I feel not like using the word mandatory, but I don't know a better word to use it right now here. And I just feel like if you make mandatory pieces for your, you know, your combination of Legos, it's just, I don't know. I don't know, dude.
You draw them in with the archetype, saying you can play this holy mage, and then you ambush them with 1,000,000 support gems.
Exactly.
Nice.
I do think, though, that PoE has gone in a direction where at least crafting and a lot of other systems have gotten a lot more complex. So I do think it's perfectly all right to have the skills not having to kind of like also have like the most amount of complexity in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. Well, the crafting is an entirely optional, right? You can load Path of Exile up and get all the way to max without doing any significant crafting, and that's enough that we own the person's soul, and then they can read the wiki.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting Berserker rework or rebuff or whatever to be very specific to skills. Or like him having very, very like specific skill bonuses to something that are so good that you just feel like you have to do it.
It's a good point to move on to arguing.
So going into more like general PoE stuff, I'm just curious, looking back and reflecting on Betrayal, since it had quite a mixed community reaction, like how do you feel about it basically?
I didn't see the mixed reaction. Maybe I was reading Reddit on the wrong days, but I thought people really liked it, to be honest.
The league seemed to be well received.
Hey, wait, sorry. What was the
but
question?
I don't know how much of that was down to it also being bundled.
And they fill up and get all the way to max without doing any significant crafting, and that's enough that we own the person's soul, and then they can read the wiki.
Yeah.
It's a good point to move on to arguing.
So going into more like general PoE stuff, I'm just curious, looking back and reflecting on Betrayal, since it had quite a mixed community reaction, like how do you feel about it basically?
I didn't see the mixed reaction. Maybe I was reading Reddit on the wrong days, but I thought people really liked it, to be honest.
People really liked Betrayal like the first week, I feel like. Before the main the big player base started hitting maps where like higher tier maps where the syndicate guys just started going fucking crazy. I feel like the first few days people really loved it.
League seemed to be well received, but I don't know how much of that was down to it also being bundled with the master changes and just, you know, the general overhaul to the base of the game. Because a lot of the complaints that I was seeing whenever I was seeing them were mostly directed at Syndicate itself, rather than pretty much any of the other changes outside of how Alpha operates, but that's a very specific thing.
Yeah, I understand that like the encounters were rippy and there were various, you know, concerns with various bits and pieces. I don't think any more than we normally had in the league, right? Like, you know, we have problems with our releases sometimes and we try to fix them over time, and some leagues are more complicated or have issues and we try to polish those up before we put them in the core game. But we certainly read the feedback, and, you know, I think you'll find that Synthesis is, let's just say, you know, good in different ways and bad in different previous leagues have been.
Rise, you
I
don't seem
feel
too
like-
confident on that
Yeah,
one.
I saw Rise holding something in there.
There is a lot of negative feedback when it came to, I think, the difficulty of Syndicate, but you guys seem to have toned that down. I think the biggest complaint was just the randomness of damage. It did feel like overall in Path of Exile, you have like certain breakpoints that you get to in terms of difficulty, but when it came down to the Syndicate, there was just so many things to keep track of that the difficulty seemed just a lot more random. Like your ranks you have to keep track of, and then the different enemy spawns, and then also on top of it you would have items that could really change up an encounter and add map mods on top of that. I think a lot of people felt like maybe it was just a little bit too much.
Oh yeah, I totally understand from the growth point of view. To try to, I mean, fuck. This is gonna sound so fucking weird, but I kind of understand why they would try to simplify things and do those easy to get into archetypes, right? I totally understand it, and I don't think there's really nothing we can say or do about it, because that's just, if it's gonna help so much, like they have proper numbers, it's gonna help a lot, then it's gonna help a lot on people getting there, but I still just really dislike the ascendancy changes myself.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I mean, the team have seen that feedback, of course. You'll probably find that those same problems are present in the version, and they have, like, done a relatively detailed pass over some of the betrayal stuff before it's making it into the core game. Like you'll see in the patch notes, there are changes to the stuff, especially now that you get multiple betrayal encounters in one area. That's required quite a lot of kind of from the ground up re-implementation of parts of the league. Hopefully behind the scenes and subtle things. They've done balance passes over bits and pieces and readjusted rewards. I think there was a manifesto about this.
Yep.
Hopefully
Also,
it helps address community feedback.
It's a little hard to judge too, because a lot of the most intense community feedback was right at the start when people were very unfamiliar with the mechanic, and when the mechanic was at its rippiest, because we saw, adjustments to visuals, adjustments to numbers, adjustments to fortifications in particular. So it's hard to tell how much of the league mechanic becoming more palatable was a result of players playing it longer and actually learning what the enemies do, and how much was a result of the changes.
Certainly. It wouldn't be the first Path of Exile League to be super rippy at the beginning. I mean, if you remember Invasion or various other fun ones like that, we certainly had some relatively large outcry. And I honestly prefer that we erred on the side of rippiness, because I think the worst thing we could do is to release an unchallenging league that then we can't make harder halfway through, because that would just make everyone angry. I think it's better to produce harder content. I mean, I prefer not to be too hard, but, this is a hardcore game, right? I'm sure a lot of the community agree they'd rather have it slightly rippy than too easy.
Yeah, still one of my biggest disappointments with the implementation of Delve and with the changes to Delve early on is the fact that the EMP monsters went from being actually terrifying nightmares to things I just don't even care about or notice anymore.
Yep, it is entirely possible for us to overreact to something like that.
So what I'm hearing you say here is that this is not the last time we see a difficulty spike of betrayal and invasion in PoE.
I think that we'll try to get it right, and it does. By the way, what's up with chat spamming question marks when you talk? This is
They just do that.
It's a meme.
They do that.
Wait, what did he say?
It's not feelings, guys. What's
Terrifying nightmares to things I just don't even care about or notice anymore.
Yep, it is entirely possible for us to overreact to something like that.
So what I'm hearing you say here is that this is not the last time we see a difficulty spike of betrayal and invasion in PoE.
I think that we'll try to get it right, and it does. By the way, what's up with chat spamming question marks when you talk? This is
They just do that.
It's a meme.
They do that.
It's not feelings, guys. We'll try to get the balance right, but I'd rather be slightly on the difficult side than slightly on the.
I can respect.
Honestly, the Nugi's segue the question, like from the context, I couldn't. I was like, wait, what? I was trying to like think of the you know, the like, how do you connect these two things? Like, how you connect what he was saying into the question. And it's like, yeah, I kind of understand the question mark right there, but you know why? Like, it's the question was a decent segue from his like talk, because he was talking about like overreactingly nerf things. It doesn't every question. Nuki needs to format his questions a bit more. He says happy for saying it in a free flowing form. Oh god, that's why I should never be on a podcast with a dev. Like all the Baeclast where I am, I try to explain something and then just Octavian or someone else has to like rephrase it so that the people understand what I'm saying. But so yeah, from the Nugi's question. So since Chris was talking about overreactingly nerfing something because it was too hard. So the takeaway is like, okay, so they're introducing things as super hard based on that, and they would just like hopefully, instead of like overreacting nerf it, just like nerf it a bit. So it's a good question. It's a good question.
Yeah, one thing quickly, you've mentioned in some interviews with 4.0 you want to retire like some of the past leagues, never really have more than 10 at the game at once. How much of that was inspired, if at all, by like rotations in Magic the Gathering?
I love getting inspired by Magic the Gathering, and I would love to tell you that thing was, but it actually wasn't. It's more a matter of just complexity. Like, for example, I mean, I'm not saying Tormented Spirits are going away. They're staying. There's no problem with Tormented Spirits, but that's exactly the kind of thing that one day we could decide to retire if the content gets old and it's not doing a lot for players. Like with vacuum farming turned down to the point where it's not going to happen much, and the random rare that they guarantee being dropped being kind of worthless. It's the kind of thing that we could decide, hey, no more Tormented Spirits. I mean, we are keeping them at the moment for various reasons. We like them. But we do think that the additional mechanics introduced relatively rapidly throughout the storyline does have a negative effect on newer players. And to some extent, maybe maps can be too busy. I mean, I wouldn't have said that 2 years ago, but there's certainly a lot of stuff going on at the moment.
Holy shit. The fucking 9,000 IQ dev moves introduce stuff too hard or too easy on purpose, so you can react to community saying that it's not fine, and then they magically fix it. Oh my god. Holy shit. Tinfoil hat time, boys.
So Exiles. Kind of feel like that a little bit at this point, I think, to many people. Where in the early game, they're really challenging and really rewarding, but in the end game, it's kind of...
But Exiles show off all the pet MTXs so well.
Yeah, nice. That Flame Blast Exile, by the way, in hardcore, that guy's bad news. That makes the game exciting for me.
Okay. Nice.
Wait, is he saying Magnus is hard in POV currently? Okay, I'll take everything back about saying that Chris is on par with the game right now. That comment there, just... I hope he's joking. Because Magnus used to almost one-tap you with 10-stack Flame Blast with like 80 resist. And nowadays, the 16 Magnus won't do shit to you even if it 10-stacks you with like 70 resist. With like no other mods. I mean, if you don't know that he slaps you like a wet noodle, it looks extremely scary when you see the big fucking mega fire circle around you. But it doesn't really do much. Unless if it hits you with flammability in an elemental weakness map where you aren't prepared to, for some reason you don't have curse immune flask and you were like literally just like barely elemental weakness cap, like LV cap, and then you hit the flammability on top, well then it hurts, but yeah, I don't know.
One thing just kind of on that note though, so when it comes to like retiring old mechanics, when you're designing your new leagues, are you designing them in a way that they could be replaceable, or are you purely thinking about stuff from years ago?
We don't really have anything in particular in mind that we're try to keep the game as more to emphasize the fact that, you know, there's no guarantee that leagues are going to stay around in the game, and we think that's important, that that's signaled well in advance.
Chris is involved in the game
nowadays.
After Tencent acquired them, he has more time to spend. He has more time to spend on the actual game.
Try to keep the game as more to emphasize the fact that, you know, there's no guarantee that leagues are going to stay around in the game, and we think that's important, that that's signaled well in advance. Like the concept of one-day incursion might just be turned off because we feel like it is an important thing to prepare people for, because that way there's less backlash when it happens. The new leagues are entirely possible to turn them off, right? They're pretty self-contained. If there's no sulphite and no delve entrance, then there's no more delve, and that's just a thing. I mean, obviously, you lose all the fun bits. And as it gets integrated into the master system, you certainly lose important things we'd have to put elsewhere. So it's unlikely that those master-related leagues are going anywhere anytime.
I just realized why we as a community are kind of fucking dog shit. He just said that like a specific exile that the community doesn't really see as, like the majority of the community, like the people who kind of know what they're doing and have proper builds, don't have an issue with, while probably the average players like barely get to like red maps. I mean, in that, like from that point of view, like average players might have issues with Magnus, I don't know. And then like when he says something like that, and we just fucking crucify him instead of like just thinking of the fact that he is probably not talking from the point of view of people that know everything.
Soon. But one day, right, like Path of Exile has been released in some form for 6 years now with leagues, and there'll be at least another 6, right? So there'll be quite a lot of leagues we have to make decisions about in the future.
Speaking of older league mechanics and that sort of thing, what, you know, I forgot the question halfway through because your topic got interesting and I got focused on what you were saying rather than the question I had. I'm going to pass it off to one of the others.
Okay then, so one thing then, did you say that you're not necessarily designing stuff to go core in the game, but is it fair to say that most leagues these days seem to be assumed to be rolled in, because the last league that didn't get rolled in was not like Talisman?
So that's a good question. When we designed the 2018 league, the 4 of them, they were explicitly designed with the plan of replacing the Forsaken Masters. Like we sat down in December of the year beforehand when we were trying to work out what Bestiary was going to be, and we said, when are we replacing the Forsaken Masters and how does this happen? And I could talk about this for an hour if needed. There's a lot of cool stuff there. But it essentially came down to, we're going to have a set of compelling character-based leagues, and then we're going to swap those in as the new Masters in one big surprise thing when the old Forsaken Masters have mysteriously been corrupted, blah, blah, blah. And we worked out a plan. Okay, so those were all intended to go into the core game. Now, the nice thing about intending is that we could potentially change it. There was a mixed reaction to Bestiary, right? That caused us to think about the plan. Do we really want to put Bestiary in the core game? Oh, well, we can worry about that later. And then later on, we fixed it. No one's complained about it since, which is great. So that went well. I don't know whether Synthesis is going core. We haven't even had a single discussion. Like, not once has any staff member asked anyone that I'm aware of saying, hey, is Synthesis going core? We're going to see if people like it. I mean, obviously they'll like it because it's awesome, but we're going to see whether it's got long-term legs in the game. It probably does, because it's got the whole like delve-like super endgame kind of stuff going on with cool things to do, and having more parallel endgames is good, but we haven't had that discussion yet. And if it comes down to it, we may say, no, not core, and then have it available as a thing in the future. Or maybe we'll say, sure, it's harmless to have in there alongside other stuff. We'll see based on reaction and how it feels after a few months of playing it.
All right, we're still on the topic of leagues. I've recalled my question, so chat can stop spamming question marks at me, which I'm sure they're doing. I haven't even looked, but I'm sure they are. Has your philosophy changed over the last few, honestly, years at this point about league-specific items from previous leagues? Because there once was a time when they were much, much harder to obtain, which is sort of indicated.
And now you just buy a divination card for it?
By the rarity of, Time Lost Relic. It's a set of 10 cards, and they drop incredibly uncommonly. But now there's, Delve that spits them out. There's Incursion that spits them out. There's Syndicate, I believe, to drop a unique item does. Are they just meant to be much more common, and you want to just give players more options to build around?
This is one of the cases of reward creep, where it has this subtle effect causing that problem, and I feel in my heart I would rather that they were rare to get, just like I would love it if the rare items you find on the ground are so special and meaningful that they're frequently an upgrade for your character, and so on, right? There's like philosophical ideals here that we're not 100% meeting. So this is tricky because giving out those items is special, right? But like anything that people can become inoculated towards, the more we give them out, the less valuable they are. And so we have to be careful with how much we do that. And in some cases, we've taken stuff and specifically toned it back in our design to kind of give it some breathing room so that it can be meaningful again later. An example is why we don't have the reliquary keys in every single league, right? They'd be completely worn out if we did.
So you would say that we've reached a point that is too heavy on league specifics, then you'd be interested in toning that back? Or is that just a personal opinion for you?
I personally find stuff is too heavy way before reaction is done against it, right? I'm way on the hardcore side of opinions about Path of Exile, and I purposefully let the team make decisions. And see, team members who play more than I do, that's the thing, right? I don't play enough Path of Exile to wake up one day and go, screw it, the monsters are going to do 4 times as much damage, we're playing hard mode now, guys, right? Like, instead I let the team members who farm Uber Elder and play a lot and multiple level 100 characters per league, they can make these calls because they honestly know better than I do. So one day maybe I'll make a director's cut version of the game that's got some insanity going on where it's hard to even get to maps, and 10% of chat will like that. But in the meantime, I will let more qualified people make decisions about the game that they know better than I do. I am able to help with league design and make sure that they're going in the right direction philosophically, but specifics about drop rates and what items are available and that kind of stuff, I really have good experts on the team to handle now.
So with you tuning out more or having a goal at least in the future of removing some leagues, have you considered the implementation then as well when you going from league to league? Because right now what we have is we have a 10%, right? Every time we get into a new league, you take 10% of the old one and just add it to it, which has been going on for quite a while. Have you ever considered, with maybe less clutter, having more of the same experience that you could then seek out rather than you just get 10% of it in a map?
I see what you're saying. So to have the league in the game, if you play it, but you have to basically choose. This is basically a Zana mod kind of thing. And we can do that, right? Like, we can slap Talisman on a Zana mod and you can get yourself some talismans.
Please,
if you want
do
to.
so.
It's no problem. Maybe that's a good home for synthesis if we don't want to have memory fragments.
I want talismans.
I suspect we'll see a bit more of that in the future.
I want talisman reworked where it's not completely fucking dog shit to try to upgrade them and all that. Please. Talisman had so much like cool potential. They just kinda fucked up a bit. Like the potential is here. It's there. Come on. Gimme.
Future, but for the time being, like, we are quite happy with Path of Exile being busy. Like, a lot of the designers like the fact that there's surprising, exciting stuff to do that combines in interesting ways in the various
just remove
maps.
all white talismans.
The feels like standard thing hasn't been a complaint for a few months now while Betrayal's been out, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, standard doesn't feel like standard anymore.
Good. And that was our number one concern, by the way. Like, when Diablo 3 was on the horizon back in 2012 or so, we looked at the stuff they had going on in their Act 1 and in beta, and they had these random events and stuff. I mean, it was more towards the beginning of their game than towards the end. And we had nothing like that in Path of Exile. And so this worried us because our world didn't feel as alive back then in terms of random things you can encounter. And that's one of the reasons why the leagues tried hard to jam stuff in every area, because over time we could accumulate just a living world of cool things happening all over the place. And I now feel we've achieved that to an even larger degree, so that new action RPGs will struggle to compete with Path of Exile's content. Because, I mean, all these action RPGs that are being made by other companies, they're going to be a 4-act experience with something like difficulty levels or adventure mode, I'm guessing. They're not going to have 10 acts and 18 leagues worth of content in there. And this is something we're trying to capitalize on as much as we can before eventually that becomes an actual market issue for us.
So basically kind of like the World of Warcraft effect, where every new MMO just couldn't compete with like the 10 years of development, and you're kind of just completely dominating the space because of it. Sort of thing.
That's the plan. I mean, it's great to have a lot of content in the game. As long as it's got value, we like Path of Exile things to do. People focus on playing different types of things. People play the trading game. People play the racing game. People play the guild game. People, make unique item collections and try to get all the ones of various types.
There's guilds in the game?
There are all of these things they can do, and if grinding synthesis or grinding delve is exciting to them as an alternate endgame, that's even better for them to have that experience available.
We briefly touched a little bit on delve earlier. I'm just curious if delve has had many issues with like limiting future design space by just like how all-encompassing it is.
I didn't see any significant issues with it. I mean, my main core problem with delve, so rewarding, we have to do various things to limit the access to it, and that always upsets the community.
People play dissolving the layouts every
they want
store.
unlimited access, right? And our recent change, where there's essentially 80% more sulphite because you find 3 nodes in each area, is basically a capitulation to fine, have all the delve you want, is kind of the philosophy of let's just see what it's like then if you have a bunch of delving. And I don't know, I don't necessarily fully agree with that, but I was happy to support it when the team brought it up as a solution to people being angry about sulphite, and so we reserve our right to change it in the future, but we're about to enter a metagame of some significant rewards coming from delve content compared to before.
I think it's more to do
of let's just see what it's like then if you have a bunch of delving. And I don't know, I don't necessarily fully agree with that, but I was happy to support it when the team brought it up as a solution to people being angry about sulphite, and so we reserve our right to change it in the future, but we're about to enter a metagame of some significant rewards coming from delve content compared to before.
I think it's more to do with the fact that it's not that people want to delve because
Wait.
delve is super boring. I think people just
Wait. Did he say that we're about to enter a metagame where there's significantly more rewards from delve? I think Dan just fucking had like 15 delve-gasms when he heard that, dude. And more accessible. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you
awesome.
could probably make it more accessible, but nerf the rewards, and most people would be happy.
Well, we'll certainly consider that, but we do like the. It's good to find stuff.
Oh, you're cutting out.
Sorry, you cut out there. That's a very important sentence. If you could repeat that again.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
You cut out. If you could repeat that again. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I was saying that we do like the fact that delve is very rewarding, and so it's we don't want to just neuter it completely and then say play all the delve you want. Hopefully we can find a middle ground. And Jonathan will be very pleased that you enjoyed the design of delve. He was very instrumental in that particular league, and is very glad that people
I fucking love delve, dude.
Playing it for funness' sake, not just the rewards.
So as an endgame player of delve, one thing that I've always had a bit of an issue with is the availability of it, because I don't, and this is, I'm probably in a minority here, and I accept that, but I do find myself not really enjoying it too much because there is a lack of availability. And if you want to push your character, which I thought was part of the design of delve, it is very time consuming to even get there to the point where you can challenge yourself.
Due to the fact that it's difficult to find enough sulphite to push hard?
Yes. So you're never really limited by character strength. It's more about sulphite gains that is limiting you. Like, there comes a point.
I don't understand how Noogie set out the question. I think I'm in the minority. Was that what he said? Wasn't that what Noogie said? I'm pretty sure like probably like 95% of the player base feel the exact same. That it would be nice to test our character without needing to spend a year gathering the sulphite to get there.
Where yes, it does. You do get enough, and it is difficulty, but it's very, very, very time consuming, and it's if you just want to sit down one day, you always have to go through these motions to even get the ball rolling. It's not just a place where you can go and kind of challenge your character.
Go for the story.
Alright, so I'm going to tell you a story.
Yeah.
A very long time ago, Path of Exile had what was called the Maelstrom of Chaos. This was the precursor to maps, and the way it worked was we'd had various attempts at what the final difficulty level of Path of Exile was. Like, our first plan was, hey guys, we'll have a 4th difficulty level, and that difficulty level will be incredibly hard, but also very constant, so you can play anywhere in the game you want. It doesn't matter whether you like grinding the ledge, or the Western Forest, or the prison. You can just play anywhere, you know, like adventure mode or something, and get good experience. So we did that, and people played just the ledge for obvious reasons. So we said, fine, we're going to make it so that it's tapered upwards, so that people play the harder areas. That wasn't working either. So we said, okay, because of the fact that there is lack of tileset diversity, which causes people to get burnt out, we're going to make these 20 random areas with a whole bunch of tilesets, like maps basically, but they weren't items, called the Maelstrom of Chaos. That when you finished, I think it was like Act 2 was the highest act in the legitimate playthrough. Once you've finished Act 2 difficulty 4, you get to unlock a waypoint to the Maelstrom of Chaos. And there are 20 consecutive areas that get harder, and they got very hard, that have higher and higher rewards. It's like having 20 tiers of maps, basically, or 20 chunks of delve depth. And you could just basically run through to the point you wanted to play in and play at that difficulty. And we thought this was great because if you wanted to skip ahead to higher content, you could do so, but there was kind of some clear signaling you shouldn't. And so the top streamers got to the highest Maelstrom of Chaos areas and had difficulty with it because it was hard, but that was exciting and it was good for the stream. And our stats showed that the average players were pushing past all the monsters that they could be challenged by, getting to the hardest area where the best stuff drops, and then dying and hating it. And it was terrible. Retention was going down. People were quitting left, right, and center. It was bad. Like, people felt, I can see a streamer be good at this game.
Why are people so stupid, dude? That feels so bad because that the stupidity of people in this particular topic he's explaining makes the game worse. Basically, in my opinion.
And I know I'm good at this game, though they weren't, and expect to play in the highest content. And so we had a big discussion that I vividly remember to this day, because it's probably the thing that made Path of Exile good, was the map system. And that involved us saying, what if there was a cost to open these Maelstrom areas that escalated? And so we said...
Because people are so fucking entitled and think more of them than... Basically everyone, if we have 15,000 people answer the question, are you better than the average driver? I think it's probably gonna be like fucking 95% who said that they're better than the average driver, which obviously doesn't make any sense, right? So it's just god damn it, dude. The fact that they have to tune down the difficulty and shit like that because people think that they should have access to the highest content like that. God damn it, dude. It makes my blood boil.
Okay, so what if getting...
I actually want the hardest content to be so hard that even Dan basically doesn't... I mean, guess we kind of have that with Delve when you go like past... fucking 15, like when you go past like 700 delve, then you basically don't fight out anymore in hardcore if he has like even one mod. But that's difficult in the wrong way, because that's just like you're gone, you died. Just, you know, he breathes at, he looks at you and you just like fucking vanish. You just like poof, like when Thanos snap his fingers kind of thing.
The first area costs 1 alch, and getting to the second one costs 2, and then 4, and it gets higher to the point where if you want to go and waste like 30 GCPs worth of content, worth of wealth, getting into the highest Maelstrom area only to fail, you'll quickly learn that's not the right thing. And the wealth you're getting from the items that drop kind of let you pay for access to the area. So we experimented and eventually decided this was just chewing through all the currency, and maybe we could do a cool thing with item mods. So we had this plan where you sacrifice like a rare item and it reads the mods off the item and they dictate what mods the monsters get, and it was all this stuff that you could do, a bit like Dark Shrine, a little bit like synthesization. And we experimented with this and eventually decided the best thing to do was to make them actual dedicated map items, because that way the mods could say what they did on the area, and we could have a really punitive pyramid of the highest maps are really hard to get. You have to play a bunch of lower level ones, and it's unlikely to get the high ones. And if you remember the map drop odds for the initial map system, it was really hard to sustain anything.
Yeah.
And so we dropped the map system in, all the entitlement issues went away immediately. Because it took so much effort to get the higher maps, people played the right maps, and everyone had fun. And this is the reason why Delve is so punitive with sulphite costs, to be honest, right? Like, it's just this leftover thing where we firmly believe that if you accidentally let people get into content that's too difficult, it's way worse for the game. So anyway, there's my long rant about that.
Okay.
One of the main differences I would point out there between a mapping system and the Delve system, however, is that for the Delve system, your fuel is homogeneous. So everyone is using the same fuel in Delves. Everyone's using sulphite. And the people really deep and the people really early are using that sulphite way more efficiently than anyone else. And so they're able to then have the purchasing power to buy the gilded sulphite scarabs to keep pushing, and it punishes anyone who's trying to delve at, a middling depth, eye level 83, just starting 270 or whatever that is. Whereas you don't have that problem with maps, because the guy who's running a Phoenix doesn't care about a city square map. So a city square map can be worth an alk. But if everyone's competing for the same resource, then that's going to make it so that resource is priced based off the people who can pay the most.
You're 100% correct, and I really appreciate your explanation. That is correct, and it is something we'll have to work on with Delve. I'm hoping that the sulphite changes we made counteract the scarab nerfs to the point where more people have fun, but because it's a core part of the game, we're going to have to keep iterating on this league by league. So expect more changes in the future. In the meantime, please let us know your feedback after you've had a chance to play the 3.6.0 version of it.
Mm-hmm. Just to clarify for chat, GCPs used to be the main currency in the game. So 30 GCPs, like 4 GCPs were an exalted orb, okay? It was big numbers.
Yeah.
Stop it, chat.
One thing, you spoke about it a little bit before about how your intention is for players to be running like the highest levels of content, ideally. We've seen a lot of low-level play with the last few leagues, Delve especially, since we've been talking about that. How do you feel about the current risk-reward structure of Path of Exile, where a lot of the very low-level content is just as, or at least incredibly rewarding?
It's not great, and we want to fix it by having people to run harder content if they can. We think it's very important that you want to take extra challenges, take extra risk, and it makes the game more fun.
People don't run harder content if they can. Like the people as in the general people. They do whatever benefits them the most, in most cases. So you need to make the high tier content worth their time and effort.
Basically, higher heart rate equals more fun, as far as we're concerned. I mean, we're ignoring the heart attack risk here, but yeah, we do want more adrenaline going on in gameplay. So I would love to gradually improve that over time. Now the thing is, we have literally 4 million numbers in our data that we can change, and it's hard to know exactly what ones to achieve the right result. So we're working towards it, but we have to take it step by step and see how people feel about it each 13 weeks.
Actually, this leads into a little short question that maybe I should have saved for the Q&A, but it seems relevant here. Are there going to be like puzzle piece rewards, global mods, so to speak, that are gated by eye level to maybe encourage players to run higher eye level content?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like the boss is the map only as well, and I think the top boss is certainly higher level than the bottom maps. Like you certainly have to be up there in the tiers before you can even get the best uniques from it. Note that we totally hear the feedback about RNG gating the bosses, and we're not looking at doing anything particularly crazy here. So, it's more a matter of playing high-level content and being good at the game than getting incredibly lucky to see this content.
Thank you.
But this may mean that the bosses, the ones that are relatively common, don't drop a unique every time, right? Like,
I think that's way better.
25% chance of them dropping a unique.
I think it's way better that the drop rate of the item is a bit more rare, but let people have access to the content, like doing it. I think that's way better than making the boss extremely rare and always drop an item. I mean, I think it's like a balance, like it depends a bit. Like things that are like extremely rare, kinda, would be things that you can buy yourself into. Like think about like Uber Atzir, for example. I think that's fine because you can buy into it, but then when you have something like Delve, where you have to just grind, and then you hope that you get it. I think it's in a different setting, it's fine, but for something like Delve, I really dislike it. Like how rare it is. to like encounter the bosses.
Because of the fact you get to face them relatively often.
Yeah, that is far preferable in my opinion, because it means you get to play the content without, you know, inhibiting the value of those unique drops, and that is great. Like I want more people to be killing Shaper, but I still want Shaper drops to be valuable. So if you need to rework the unique drop rate for that, that's fine.
The reason why we end up with these bosses that feel RNG gated, by the way, is because the way the process works is we make our league, realize we can add some stuff to it that's pretty rare, and rare is cool because then, you know, people see it on stream occasionally and it's aspirational. And I love the idea of the game having random stuff that's a 1 in a million chance of occurring, right? That you just randomly find a mirror, that kind of stuff, right? So everything's good, and that content by itself is harmless to exist. Obviously, it's rewarding. And then we say, oh no, we need to keep pushing harder challenges because we frequently receive feedback that people want harder challenges. And so we think, oh, we'll just throw these very rare things on the challenges. And that's the mistake, I feel, is accidentally succumbing to making it now a mandatory thing, when if it was just incredibly rare and rewarding and not something that, you know, players feel they have to do to get 40 out of 40. So I suspect its presence on the challenges is what was causing the RNG getting concerned, more so than the actual, you know, punitive RNG that we've used in the past.
On the kind of note of like determining power level based on rarity, how do you feel about the fact that we've seen a lot of very powerful uniques recently? Instead of being nerfed, you've just made them inceptually rare. Where do you kind of draw the line between should we nerf this item or just make it much rarer?
That's a good question, and part of it comes down to partly comes down to whether or
No, don't cut
Cutting
off.
real quick, you're cutting off real. I don't know if you moved the telephone further or if you need to change your Discord setting, but you're cutting off.
is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yes, that was clear.
Okay, just bad internet or something. Okay, so this comes down to whether that unique item is important for people to have access to, right? Like there are items in the game like shavs in the past, for example, where it's kind of very important for certain builds, and if we just made it punitively rare, all it's doing is requiring people to grind more before they can play that build. And for some things, like for certain crazy ones, it's okay to require a bunch of grinding before people play it. But we have to basically decide what is the time gate that has to go into being able to play this build, whether or not they're looking for that unique or looking for stuff to trade for it. And to answer chat, no, I'm using my laptop rather than...
Oh,
but
sorry.
I was intending to use the phone before.
Okay.
The phone failed hard.
Alright. Yeah, I got your beta, chat.
Feels good then. Kind of on that note though, so on a similar kind of tone, when you're like designing uniques, we've seen a few almost set items through like aspects, and a few of the new uniques that we've been seeing in the new league are like they directly affect one skill in particular. How do you design a build enabling item without it feeling like a mandatory item?
That's a really good question. We've experimented with soft item sets because it's very interesting to have synergies, but we're consciously aware of the fact that if they start to feel mandatory, you have a character decked out in uniques, and that would be game killing. It has to be you actually want a soft item
Command and skill in particular. How do you design a build enabling item without it feeling like a mandatory item?
That's a really good question. We've experimented with soft item sets.
Not even a
because
smile.
It's very interesting to have synergies.
Tarky the fucking badass, not even giving a smile after he says it's a really good question, dude.
You actually want to find.
Chris is backing Tarky's back there. Tarky just like you know, this is just normal to me, okay? I don't. Can you just keep my answer?
Traits because it's very interesting to have synergies, but we're consciously aware of the fact that if they start to feel mandatory, you have a character decked out in uniques, and that would be game killing. It has to be that you actually want to find and craft rare items, because that makes your character different than other people, and it makes it harder to directly compare characters and all of that good stuff that's possibly too subtle. So in terms of build defining stuff,
Oh, thanks for the 10 months, Fossil.
I like the idea that a build can be achieved in multiple ways, and players have to weigh up the various options. And so they'll probably be seeing more of that over time, right? Like we'd discussed, and maybe even done, I can't remember, there's like 850 uniques, the concept of having like a baby shavs in the past, where that particular problem the player's trying to solve can be done with another item, which has obvious drawbacks, and the wealthy option is to go for the shavs. And so this type of thing is completely acceptable to us, to have like inferior build enabling items, which are just like the one you use until you can afford the better one.
I think a large part of what helps avoid that in Path of Exile as well in particular is the absolutely massive plethora of crafting options that included over the last few leagues. Like Shaper and Elder bases, that being combined with fossils, and now with the new implicits that we're going to be getting with synthesis, though those, I don't know if this has been answered previously. Can those occur on Shaper Elder bases, those implicits?
Oh, fuck, it's almost.
I haven't asked. I mean, I don't see why not, but let me check that with the team.
Yeah.
Yo, guys, I think I need to run quickly to the store to get milk for my coffee because I just finished my. I mean, I ran out of milk, and I'm gonna need the milk for the coffee for the podcast in like an hour and a half, and then it's like 40 minutes of this shit, dude. I'm like stopping this way too much. I don't know if I can even fucking finish this shit. Yeah, I think I'm really quickly gonna run to the store, get some milk, and then we continue this.
Feedback, right?
Ignoring everything. Yeah, just like
just snap your fingers. It
snap your
happens.
fingers.
No consequences.
I can change one thing in Path of Exile. Ignoring death costs me money if I want to. That's my job. So it really is a matter of what the community think of stuff. I don't know. I mean, you've heard my opinions about stuff, right? Like, I love the game's hardcore aspects, but I don't think that necessarily belongs in the core game. That's why I pushed for private leagues, and we've got some more awesome things that make private leagues hard. Like that private league mod, by the way, that says you can't find rare and magic items, you have to craft them, everything drops white or unique. That was a Chris special.
Oh, that's a good one.
That was me specifically saying, add this one, trust me, it'll be fun, right? We've got a durability-like system in the works, kinda, that's hopefully coming from private leagues. I'm super excited about that. And this is stuff that like 99% of players are never going to bother to play with, and it even costs money to turn on these league mods on the private league, so they're probably not even going to bother because of that. But it makes me excited to have the hard options available in Path of Exile for people who really want to challenge, because there's a lot of people who want a harder game here.
Mm-hmm. So do you have like a do you have
items cannot be dropped when you're attempting to drop an item? It just gets like you get the delete thing instead. I guess the only concept like exception to this would be like the quest items, but make it so that you can drop items. So you can't cheese playing in Eternal Lab.
Do you have like a plan for like how many mods you want to introduce to the whole Pirate League?
Not per se. I mean, I'd love to have as many as possible. It's just that development time, right? Like,
Yeah.
the 13-week schedule we're on is pretty crazy, and it's very hard to make the time to do things that are ancillary. Like, we have this custom race system that's like private leagues, where people have the ad hoc races they want to start, and they, all this cool stuff we're planning to do, and it's just hard to actually find the time to get it done, because we have to deliver these 4 releases per year. We have to make sure 4.0 is in a good state to show people at ExileCon. There's been no questions about ExileCon yet. We can talk about that. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff to do this week.
Okay, so Chris, now Bex hinted it, but just to confirm it, you're flying us all out for a live Baeclast, correct?
Nice. We will be looking at potentially getting some streamers and journalists out to the convention at our expense, right? But this is tricky because there's going to be some line redraw somewhere, and some people are going to be upset because they think they're important enough to come, and for some reason they're not invited. So I apologize in advance if you're left off the list.
Vote for me.
Yeah, that's not an enviable list to drop. That's for sure.
I'm not going to draft it myself. I'm going to make Bex do it, and she's going to have final call. So yeah, I'm clearing my conscience here, and Bex will do a great job. But I'm sorry for whoever's left off this list. It's going to be unfortunate.
You should be sorry for Bex after this comment. Oof.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
She's actually going to cancel Chris's ticket to give it to someone.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna pay for that comment, I'm sure. But in all seriousness, we'll pick whoever we can, and there's various factors in play. There are streamers and so on who, like Mathil and Ziggy, who are in Australia, where it's 10 times cheaper to get them out than it is to fly someone from Europe, and so on and so on. And we don't know how much budget is available yet. It depends how ticket sales go and so on. But yeah, we'll certainly be trying to get a lot of coverage in person, and that's one of the draws.
The only way I can get into ExileCon is there's 3 ways. First, GGG gets me there, but I'm pretty sure I'm one of those people who would get quote unquote upset. I don't think I would get upset because I personally don't think, when you compare me to others, like other streamers, less influencers, or whatever you want to call us, that I should get in there. So I'm totally not expecting to EDG deploy me there. The second option is somebody just flat out becoming a sugar daddy, which I highly what's the word, doubt, because we're talking about like probably like 1,500, like it's like around like 1k euros just for the flight, and I don't actually remember if that's like a two-way flight. And then the third option is I hide in Caesar's backpack. Hopefully he can book a flight that goes through Finland, and I'll just hide it in his fucking luggage. I think that's like probably the last option. What if we donate a one-way flight and you stay at GGG? I like that. So basically, yo, we need to make like a petition for this. So if the players, if the community pays by ticket for there, then they just hire me straight up. Yeah, I like that too. I'm happy with that one too.
For having ExileCon is so the fans not only get to meet the developers, get a chance to see some of their favorite streamers and so on from across the room.
On the topic of ExileCon, aside from information on 4.0, what else should people be excited for going into ExileCon?
We don't only have information on 4.0. We've got information on 9.0 is a pretty. Like, I know a lot more about 3.0 than I know about 3.7.
We got you cutting in and out at the most important moment there.
Oh no. So can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, so 3.9 is the December expansion for this year. It's nowhere near as large as 4.0. It's more like Betrayal or something. And so we know a lot more about the kind of things we want to do in that than we do about 3.7.0 and 3.8.0. So that's another big announcement there, right? Like we're going to announce 3.9.0, we're going to announce 4.0, let you have a chance to play both of these. And also there's going to be like 10 talks from developers. There's tons of cool stuff you'll be able to do. We've got some neat surprises lined up. We'll be putting a page up either this week or next where you can buy tickets. We'll have the date and the location and all the things you need to book things. So it should be fine. We've also got some cool VIP options for exclusive dinners with developers and that kind of stuff. I think Jonathan's personally cooking food for some people.
It's
Whoa.
What? That's nuts.
Just to confirm, chat, Jonathan time is best times. That's pretty impressive.
There's like if you just ignore like the obvious names like Chris and Bex and Jonathan like that, there's two people I would really like to meet from GDG. First one is Neon, and then the second one is Dan GGG. I think he's the guy who is basically taking care of all the layout generation and shit like that. He's a person I would really like to have a chat with.
Jonathan's very good at cooking, by the way. Like,
Ooh.
I'm not kidding here. This is something he cares deeply about being good at.
I have heard in the past that food is a hot topic at Grinding Gear games.
It's hot when it's barbecue. For sure.
Pineapple or not on pizza? I would like to know the stance at GGG office. Who likes pineapple on pizza and who doesn't? I think that's something we as a community should demand for them to tell us, I think.
Sure.
Since you probably can't say like exactly when you're selling the tickets, do you have any rough-ish price points in mind for what these tickets could cost?
I don't think it's harmful for me to talk about the roughish price points, but they're not cheap, right? Like, we only have a limited number, we have a lot of expenses to cover, and so it is a premium thing, right? Like, if you don't have spare money, you probably can't go to ExileCon. Like, it's going to cost thousands of dollars of flights to get out here, hundreds of dollars of hotels, right? Like, downtown Auckland is a metropolitan CBD. It's not incredibly cheap. We've got deals with hotels, but compared to the thousands and thousands of dollars it costs, and the fact you're going to want to go and see New Zealand and drive around and go to the Lord of the Rings filming locations and go to the Weta Workshop tour and check out Hobbiton and all that kind of stuff that's expensive.
I can sleep at someone's couch.
$200 each are going to be quite cheap in comparison, but we do need to price them high because we're already making like a $500,000 loss on the event, even if we sell all the tickets. So we do need to recoup some costs so we can pay for it.
If we're getting into the details, do you have like an expected amount of people? Like, how many people are you expecting?
Well, the details I don't want to talk about are things like exact dates. And the reason, I know what the dates are, it's in mid-November, but the reason why I don't want to give the dates here is because then people start booking flights and then they miss out on like a VIP dinner that they didn't realize was at a certain day or something. So I'm happy to talk about broadly what's at ExileCon, because if you go to the pathofexile.com/ExileCon page we threw up like months ago, it's got a list if we want to do roughly this stuff. So I'm happy to talk details. It's just that the actual page with the tickets for sale and the exact details are coming out in a few days. And please wait until you see that before you actually try to like book plane tickets. Anyway, I've completely forgotten what your question was. Could you please repeat it?
How many people are you preparing for?
We're probably expecting to have about 1,500 people. We have a good venue. It's got theater capacity, so we can have an awesome announcement keynote that shows you some cool stuff. For approximately 1,500 people. It might be able to squeeze some more in, but bear in mind we're bringing some media and journalists. We're bringing all of our developers. They may get a ticket for their partner or something each. And so I think we're putting up about 1,000 regular tickets for sale initially, and roughly 150 VIP ones for sale at first. The VIP ones...
Man, I'm so sad because they just missed out the percentage of a percentage meme right there. That the only people who can pass normal lab are allowed to buy a VIP ticket. God damn it.
It's just a lot more expensive and you get like priority in a few things, but also, you get to do dinner with the developers and so on.
I think you guys are underselling yourself.
Yeah, 1.5 seems very low.
You have to come out to New Zealand. So these are people
true.
who have Like these are people who are willing to waste thousands of dollars going to the airline. That money's not going to Path of Exile if they spend thousands of dollars on plane tickets. So
Yeah, but don't you have
But
like
don't you- yeah, even
New
in New
Zealand
Zealand.
fans? Yeah.
And an
Couldn't you
Australian
fill the venue?
audience.
yeah, well maybe we do fill the venue and then it's first come first served in that case. So X and I have been talking about strategy for putting the tickets on sale, and we do think that we need to give the community a heads up where we say at this time they will go on sale, and that way there can be a bit of a. I mean, I don't think they're going to sell out, right? Like, it's an expensive event to go to. People in chat are asking about virtual tickets. So here's our plan. You can watch all the stream stuff for free. You don't need to pay. If you want to see the announcements, just watch it on Twitch. We're not going to charge you for that. We're not planning to sell virtual tickets. You basically just get the experience of seeing the announcements for free. Now, note that we're not planning on streaming absolutely everything that happens at the event. There is a degree of having to go there to see some of the cool stuff. But realistically, the important part, which is seeing 400, you can just watch from home with no problems.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Don't worry, Chad. We'll stream it.
Yeah,
the
I
other
reckon
ones.
about
Our
to
goal is
say.
for people to see it, right? Like, this is a big marketing event for these expansions. The
Yeah.
intention is as many people watch it as possible. And I'm
You
pretty
don't-
sure
you don't
BlizzCon
wanna-
did stream for free their main announcement. It was just the other content they charged people.
You don't want to hide away the, what did you say, $500,000 expenditure and not
Yeah.
allow people to see what's going on and be part of the spectacle. It's kind of the whole reason.
It's going to be
question.
awesome. Though. Like, I love fan meetups, right? Like, getting 20
Mhm.
people together in a bar and us just talking about how the development works. Like, I mean, I try to be candid here, but there's 7,000 people watching and then hundreds of thousands more later on YouTube. So I have to be a bit careful. But when there's some beer involved and, no cameras, we can talk about a lot more stuff. And that's why ExileCon is going to be awesome, because there's going to be a ton of developers who aren't PR trained, and they're going to say all sorts of stuff they're not meant to about the future expansions. It's a goldmine for information. So it's going to be so much fun to hang out with the community for the weekend.
God damn it.
You guys are really underselling yourself. The 1,500, Chris, I promise you.
Yeah, I think it's going to sell out a lot faster than you think it will.
It's gonna
To be honest.
sell out.
It's gonna go
2
like
hours.
that.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
actually one
joking.
thing that I would probably ask. This is a very selfish thing to ask. For the streamers who can't get flown out, because fair enough, would there be any kind of system where they can kind of at least get dibs on a ticket? So that
I
they
think
at
so.
least... Okay.
You have to bear in mind that, like, there'll be some guy who's got 20 viewers, streamer, and he's trying very hard, amazing guy, and makes great content, and he is a streamer, and he's doing everything right, but he hasn't reached your level of success yet, and he may ask, may I please have my free streamer ticket? I've been working very hard at this, and we have to draw a line somewhere. So I'm pretty sure there will be the people who get flown out, the people who get just the hotels, the people who get just a ticket, and the people who get a polite apology.
Okay.
Yo, if you just
Also,
fly
one
me
other
there,
thing,
it's
on
fine.
the
We
terms
do the
of
rest. It's fine.
Like the opening announcement stuff being streamable. Just to clarify, because some companies have different rules to this. Are you going to be okay with the streamers who can't?
I'm just gonna get the apology. That's my case.
Can't make it streaming your ceremony and then like doing live commentary.
Like, as in they're
I'm
restreaming.
fine with it.
our
Yeah, they're
stream
like
and then
re-streaming your
reacting.
stream.
Mm.
Yeah.
Pretty
I've
sure it's
accepted
fine.
it
I mean,
already.
that sounds like more publicity, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
brilliant. Because
That way, if they somehow would pick me, it would be fucking massive fucking surprise, and it's not a disappointment because I'm already in the mindset that I won't get it in.
there are quite a few companies who actually like they'll shut that down ASAP. So it's actually really good to know that in advance.
Yeah. I don't think we're particularly known for shutting stuff down.
No,
Have we ever shut
No, I
anything
wouldn't say
down?
so.
I can't remember any time.
You shut down Morse pretty hard with those balance
Nice.
changes.
There was some Thunderboy thing.
We had a couple of like loose gaming industry
Exactly,
questions,
Octavia.
but chat and also anyone here. Is there anything more about ExileCon that you want to ask before we kind of move on? Because otherwise, it will literally just be 30 minutes of me begging for a ticket. So that's just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of what I'm worried about. I think we're good. Unless you have something, Chris, that you maybe might want to mention that we're absolutely forgetting.
Yeah.
You know, we've never been to a cool event like
That's a
this
good
one.
question. So, what else is there?
You just need to say that you
I
get
would
to see
encourage you
Bex's
to
meme
just
folder.
plan an epic trip around. Like, there's so much cool stuff to see. Don't treat it as fly into Auckland to do the convention. People are saying merch. We are getting merch made. I mean, not tons, right? Like, it's expensive and hard, but we have some cool stuff. And so
Yay.
we're getting There'll be a merch shop. Yeah, it should be fun.
One thing that I know people care a lot about, do you think there'll be any exclusive MTX for the ExileCon people?
I believe that we'll probably give an exclusive single MTX to the attendees so that they can, in fact, but this isn't a big deal kind of thing. Like, our goal isn't to like drown them in free swag to the point where everyone's jealous. It's more a matter of, you got a thing. I don't know what the thing is yet, but and I'm careful not to speculate.
If there's only something like 1,500 like special ExileCon Kiwis, I'm telling you, those are going to sell for millions on eBay, and that's how you get all your costs back. 100%.
True.
We weren't planning to sell them on eBay ourselves, but the intention was that...
Cut out the middleman, Chris, it's fine.
So the way it works with signing up for ExileCon tickets is you do it on your Path of Exile account. Like, you log into the site and you buy the ticket, and therefore the microtransactions can go directly on your account rather than have to give you a code that goes on eBay. Sorry.
It's one
I mean, that's good. I prefer that system.
That's why I have prepared, well, some people have already prepared couple dozen accounts, and then they just use the one that looks the most legit and then sell that account.
It's going straight to the account, because then you...
It's one
I mean, that's good.
Kind of like they did with the the beta access, if you guys remember. 11211 or something like that.
I prefer that system where it's going straight to the account, because then you don't have all the scumminess of like people stealing codes and all of that stuff. I think that's a good way of doing it.
Also, we're probably not going to sell Kiwis again, because that includes beta, and we have a lot of very, very rightly entitled people who spend a lot of money early on saying, hey, please don't do Kiwis. And I think they're in the right there.
Yeah, no Kiwis.
See that? That's my Kiwi.
No Kiwis and no razor footprints, please.
Yeah, chat's suggesting a different bird.
Oh,
That's not a bad idea.
yeah, it's actually,
So the spicy question that I wasn't sure that you're going to approve, but you said you didn't know what you were going to say to.
Honestly, they're just gonna give a token. Dude, that would be great.
What are your thoughts on the recent mass layoffs in the industry, specifically in areas of community management or growth, as someone at the head of the studio?
I don't think GGG will ever get into a position where these layoffs, I don't really understand why come mass layoffs as opposed to just, you know, if they don't like working with someone, they gradually phase them out or whatever people do in companies. I don't know. We don't really lose staff. So I'm not sure how that works, but I have seen that other companies have laid off half their staff. I imagine if they get into...
Dude, I literally know only one person out of the whole GGG office who doesn't work there anymore, and that's Lionel.
Big game, they might need, like, Path of Exile's doing well, right? Like, this year especially, we saw massive increases in player numbers, and, you know, the future's looking really good. But this is also kind of up to the community, right? Keep recommending the game to your friends. Keep playing it. It's okay to not necessarily play for the entire duration of the league. Just come back every single league. We're going to be releasing cool stuff. If we ever release a league you don't like, just come back for the next one. I mean, you're all here after you didn't like Beastery, right? So that's a good sign. But
what?
No, Beastery was amazing.
For the record, we liked it.
I liked it as well. I think there was just a bit of, like, internet loves to hate stuff. Plus the nets are a bit clumsy when you nuke the whole screen at once. So, with regard to mass playoffs, I don't know. I mean, GGG is not exactly like, you know, waiting to announce its own set of things like that. So, no particular problem. I am disappointed that some of my favorite developers have had to like shed quite a lot of their staff. That sucks, especially for those people. If they would like jobs, they should email us.
Yep.
Oh, damn, dude.
Actually, is that a necessity to be in New Zealand, or do you have people outside also?
Yo, guys, I got laid off from
You have to
Blizzard.
work on our office. I think the only people who don't work on our office are some local translators. But no, the developers do have to work in the office. We can get people work visas from other countries if they're good. The requirement is that in order to get a work visa for New Zealand, we have to demonstrate that we couldn't find a New Zealander who is equivalent. So if you're like some hotshot graphics programmer and we need you for optimization, we'd look in New Zealand.
That's
not
an easy
find
one for me,
anyone, and you
dude.
get the work visa. But if
Easy
it's something
win.
like customer support, realistically, we can find New Zealanders who can do customer support pretty easily. So no work visas there.
I tried to help with the spam, and I banned the only person who I shouldn't have banned. God.
So we had a few questions kind of put to the side for Q&A, just kind of spring through them. So if you
Finished translation? Oh
yes
god,
or
no.
it's fine.
Sure.
Has there been any thoughts or discussions about the update on larger action bars?
No.
What do you mean by larger action bars? You mean the number of skills that you
Yeah,
can
more
fit in?
skill slots,
Yeah,
basically.
like hitting I don't know, Alt or Shift or something to switch
Right.
to a second bar, or just having a longer one.
We had a plan of using Control or something like that to do that. It never got off the ground, but could still. It's just one of those things that we'd like to do. We just need to find a programmer who's not making a league to do it. So yeah, the idea is not dead, it's just sleeping.
Because you're doing a really fantastic job with the introduction of new abilities and vol skills.
Too
and
good.
All this sort of stuff. It's been really working out, especially the combo.
We can't fucking have anything anymore. We can't use our combos.
Abilities and it feels good. But unfortunately, frequently a lot of players run into the summoner problem of the past, which is, I would love to use this skill and vary.
Say this world is an illusion, Exile. What is the actual translation of Exile? Like the exact word. Oh, I guess cargo that is the word. Yeah. This world is an illusion, Exile. Tämä maailma on illuusio, karkoitettu. That's it in Finnish.
Hurry up my gameplay and all this, but we just don't have enough skill bars, and it's becoming pretty pressing, honestly, at this point.
I'll give you a reason why this isn't done. So we actually store the binding of what skill you have, like what key you've got something bound to, in the item itself. Because if you take that gem off and you put it in your stash or something, and then you put it back on later, it remembers where it was in terms of binding. And this is lost on trade, but this stuff means that when we add additional bars, for extra slots, basically, we have to put a bunch of effort into making sure that that's handled in terms of the items being able to store that. So there's just this subtlety like that. And when you're dealing with, I don't know, like 5 or 10 billion items in the database, you just need to be pretty careful that you don't make it slow.
Just change the code so that it doesn't remember it anymore. Easy game. You can hire me now.
For example. And so there's quite a bit of annoyance to get this feature to work, but it would be really good.
Really good.
Yeah, that seems like something that someone thought was a great idea 6 years ago, and is now kind of a slightly big problem.
We're happy with the decision. We think it was the right one. It just has consequences. Like, we like making things that are fast. Like, by that I mean that we make things that are designed for performance, and then they're hard to maintain later.
Okay.
Have you considered?
Oh, go on.
Have you considered? With the mines, you have detonate mine because it's more of an integral. It's an integral thing to use whenever you use a mine. You have to detonate it, so it doesn't take a keybind. You just get one for free. So have you maybe considered that for summoners and for all other archetypes, maybe?
Or focus.
Yeah, that works well.
It's possible. I mean, this discussion will prompt some discussion. I can guarantee, most designers are going to be watching this and they're going to come and talk to me about it in the next week or two.
I love the animation of keys this week. You want to see something cool?
I also had a lot of requests for updates on colorblind mode. I know that you said before on another podcast that you were talking about it, but has there been anything on that?
There's no new news on that. One of the things we've discovered with colorblindness, especially with betrayal, is that to some extent, just changing the intensity of the reds and greens we use can help them be distinguishable. And so we have some colorblind staff members who helped us with betrayal to make sure that the red and green and yellow lines between the different syndicate members were distinguishable due to the intensity of the muse, but they still use like bad colors, as it were. So there's stuff we're learning about this all the time, but no significant news for you.
Okay.
I'm so lost in this layout right now.
Also, kind of on that note of just things we've been asking a lot about, has there been any updates on fossil stacking?
So this is a fun one. A lot of people want a fossil stash tab, and it would be great to sell on that, but I kind of feel the need of it goes away once we add stacking. So our plan is we add stacking, and then we see if they still want to pay for a fossil stash tab, and in that case, maybe we could make one. I mean, it's pretty easy to make stash tabs. The fossil stacking is still on our list of things we want to do. It's just not done yet because it's a pain to do. And it takes, again, someone who's not working on the league. So we'd kind of have to commit to making it a 3.7.0 feature, which we haven't committed to because we don't quite know the scope of 3.7.0.
Okay. But there definitely won't be anything in place for the patch coming up then.
Nothing in 3.6.0 for that one, sorry.
Has the hiring restrictions that you talked about earlier, having to find someone or having to prove that there's not someone capable and up to the task in New Zealand before being able to look outside, made it difficult to approach some of these issues that aren't, league specific, and so need a developer that isn't devoted to the league content to fix?
Look at the Kiwi at the top of the
We can
world.
still hire developers. It's just that, Path of Exile is very complicated, and while we try very hard to find Path of Exile players to be developers, like the chat is mentioning, OpenAL is a great example. Approaches us with 1,000 hours of PoE playtime and as an excellent developer. It's very important to throw them on making content as quickly as possible, and so we constantly need more content developers, right? We're not going to be able to finish 4 at the same time as our other 4 expansions this year unless we can get more hands on actually making game content. And that's why these superfluous features like fossil stacking are easy to say, oh, it doesn't really matter, let's do it later. Even though I understand every time you open your stash, you're wanting that to have been done.
One other thing, and this is a very, very, very important question that I was asked at great length. Why does Cyclone AoE keep getting nerfed?
Oh,
I'd have to ask someone about that, unfortunately. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm a Cyclone player. I'm not going to be happy about that one either, right? But they have good reasons. They care about AoE. There's a balanced manifesto for Tuesday New Zealand time that I approved yesterday. It talks about AoE quite a bit. They care. I don't think it's Cyclone AoE, because that's melee and we don't do that.
Cyclone nerfed again? Okay. Oh god.
Okay.
Why is melee so shit, asks chat. It's not actually.
The thing is, Chris, is if you ignore all the skills which are good, and then you all ignore all the skills which aren't in quotations true melee, then you're left with the skills that people don't like.
Yeah. Look, it needs attention. A lot of Path of Exile needs attention over time, and it will get attention.
Is that something you guys distinguish between the melee splash melee and then melee like Sunder, Tectonic Slam, or is it all the same for you guys?
Oh yeah, you're right.
At the end of the
You're
day,
actually
there's a
right,
lot
we
of
don't
different melees, right? Sunder, is that really melee? I mean, it involves a weapon, and that's about where that one ends. But yeah, I mean, when the guys are doing their melee pass stuff, pick non-spells pretty much, as far as I can tell. But we'll see. I mean, I'll get more information. Now that we've said this is the thing we're wanting to do, I would like to be more vocal about the manifestos and so on throughout that process. Give you guys more of a heads up as we go. There's no need for it to be a secret surprise where suddenly on 3.7.0 announcement day we're doing melee. People know it in advance.
You're one of those, Chris. You're not real melee, huh? Okay.
I was playing
really melee.
It's the no true Scotsman argument. We can keep going down this rabbit hole until you're not a true melee player unless you're basic attacking. Come on, really? You have effectiveness of added damage and you think you're a real melee player? Come on.
Yep.
The other most spammed thing has there been any thought to lab enchants, or is that going to be something which won't happen until Labyrinth itself eventually sees changes?
Lab enchants are a big discussion internally, and there are several reasons. First one is the topic the community wants to hear about, and that topic is it's really hard to find the right lab enchant, right? There's hundreds and hundreds of different enchants possible, and you have to do a lot of runs. And currently, people will set themselves up to play lab enchant runners, where they'll run the Labyrinth repeatedly and try to get these and sell them for exalts. And if we make them easier, so you can just get the one you want, this is kind of entirely optional extra power for your character. If you get the one you want, then that completely undermines this playstyle, where some of the most effective league starts that we've seen have been from people farming the lab as a solo activity and just spam running that and getting a chance to sell for a lot, 4 exalts each and so on. And so we're very worried that if we go and make it easy for players, basically take the challenge away, that just lobotomizes this thing where these people are having a lot of fun causing that to occur in the community. And so we are reticent. I mean, we understand the problem's getting worse and work does need to be done on it, but we don't want to change it so, here's all your free enchants, you're done now.
I don't think anyone wants free enchants.
Are asking for.
I think
the second thing.
Go ahead.
Enchants are
It's like he's making like it seems like he's talking that it has to go from here to here or nothing. It's kind of what I'm getting. Obviously, they would probably do it gradually or something like that, or like smaller changes or something like that. But to me, it just kind of feels like it's just like we're not doing it because we can't go from A to B because the it's such a drastic change. But you don't have to go from the P. You can stop in the middle way somewhere.
changing a lot. I mean, now they're separate from right? Enchants mean something very different in 360. I mean, what does ring enchant mean? Nothing right now, but it might do in a future expansion. Where's that coming from?
What?
Okay.
I think that is really interesting, and I would love to dig more into that. But I think the twofold problem that people have there.
Fuck, I need to.
Though interesting, and I think
the second thing.
Go ahead.
Enchants are changing a lot. I mean, now they're separate from right? Enchants mean something very different in 360. I mean, what does ring enchant mean? Nothing right now, but it might do in a future expansion. Where's that coming from?
What?
Okay.
I think that is really interesting, and I would love to dig more into that. But I think the twofold problem that people have there, though, is one that you mentioned that it's entirely optional extra power, and for some skills it doesn't feel that way. If you're talking about like Storm Call or Tornado Shot, those are skills that are way worse without their relevant powerful helmet enchant. And as well as that, it's very difficult to get the correct enchant you need on a weird off-meta base, so it makes a lot of people feel like they can't really play with this strange alternative helmet if they want to, and they are then forced into just using Devotos or just using an Elder Royal Versionaire or whatever.
Or not even playing the skill at all in many cases.
Yeah.
Yep. These are valid concerns, and I think the team have put a lot more. It's just that I don't want to trivialize it by accident. And that sometimes happens with overreactions, right? We've overreacted in the past with stuff. And so I would rather see small gradual changes to make it easier than, like potentially, and this is me talking without having checked with it, don't true, but maybe even the ability to move enchants between items somehow so that you can get it, you can buy the random unique with it, and then move it on to the weird off-meta item you're looking for, or something like that.
Yep.
Those things could potentially be additional ways to look at it while not changing the number and nature of the enchant.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to have, I don't know, maybe an option where you have more control over the enchant that you're getting, but the enchant that you get is the merciless version instead of the Uber. So you can still get a like moderately powerful version of the enchant you want much more easily from running
that's
like Uber Lab.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time until each revamp, right? And I'm not saying there's a Labyrinth revamp coming anytime soon because it's held up remarkably well. But one day it'll be old, and one day we've got to put a paint on that, and changing that system at that point, we get forced to, or potentially earlier. And I know people want something in the next patch or two to address this issue because it is quite a hot topic one. The designers are definitely aware of it.
I've just got like one or two more, so if you guys want to throw anything into the mix or get something from chat, feel free to go for it. Should we expect any more like widespread unique rebalancing in this patch coming up?
There are some small unique balance changes. I actually took them out of the manifesto personally. It was on Wednesday, and I wanted to more clearly signal the fact that if people are going to go gamble on buying them all from PoE.trade or whatever, then they should do that based on the patch notes rather than the manifesto. I think that the changes in this expansion, because of the sheer number of buffs to everything, we've just made a few power adjustments downwards for a few key uniques, like 3 of them maybe, so it's no big deal. We have not included a full unique rebalance in this expansion, partly because the designers have been very busy doing spells. Certainly in the future we'd like to. I mean, it's so much easier to change the power level of a unique than it is to have to make a new one. And Path of Exile is very, very full of uniques at the moment. There's like 850 of them, so we'll continue to make new ones that do interesting stuff, but we don't really need to kind of spam filler ones. It would be better to take old ones and make them more powerful.
So on that note then, you're saying here that the spell reworks are so significant that it's, edging out time for a unique rework. And you mentioned earlier that it's, you're excited that it's going to shake up the meta. Does that mean that this overarching spell rework is going to be like very significant across the board?
I think it will be. I mean, it's going to mean there's so many more viable things for people to play. Like the goal here is that everything is rebalanced around all its various damage and shape characteristics and so on, and all the timing stuff. it's going to at least give a large period of confusion where people don't know what their skill is, and I think that's really good for experimentation, and people will find a lot of interesting builds. In addition, it'll just mean there's a lot more viable things, and all the bad player experiences you get where you start a character, pick the wrong spell entirely through no fault of your own, and then the game is bad because you have the wrong spell. That kind of stuff will be a lot less of a problem.
On bad player experiences, trading maps for a lot of people is something they really hate. Have you ever considered giving players options to, maybe for a high cost, like combining maps? Let's say you find like a bunch of red maps, right? Instead of having to go and trade for the ones you want, maybe you just combine the ones you have into like one specific one, right? So you consume all the maps you have. Let's say you have dig on your what's it called, your atlas, right? Let's say it's 14, and you want to go to Sunken Temple, and then you take, instead of going upwards 3-1, you can go sideways.
I'll bring it up with the team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I understand that you're.
I think it's called Horizon Orb. I think might be something else, but I think it's called Horizon Orb.
Carefully not suggesting an auction house here, diplomatic. Instead saying we can put more solution to the map problem. Appreciated. And yeah, I'll talk to the team about it.
Nice.
Just one more question about ExileCon. Will it be possible for people who are there? Because, okay, with TwitchCon, they basically run into a big issue where they did a huge announcement for something that everybody should have been streaming, but everybody was at the convention. All the journalists and streamers were all there, and it wasn't possible for them to stream. Will that be possible for us to broadcast the live event?
My understanding is that we are trying to get it so that the streamers that we're flying out have a place or method to stream so that they can cover stuff. And an example is that the official coverage that we're doing involves it's got the announcement, right? So we do our 1 hour ceremony where we talk about all the various stuff that we want to talk about. And then the same stream cuts into various community members who are there or online talking about their opinions of all of the stuff and so on. So we are trying to provide an official venue for them to do that. But of course, we want to support people streaming on their own channels for their own audiences, what they think of stuff. I don't know enough about streaming, right? Like, I've never streamed myself before. I have a very tangential relationship to this. So we are trying hard to make sure that we do cater for this correctly. I've been working closely with Ziggy and Bex and trying to make sure that we...
Vendor recipes for 3-1s isn't really RNG. When you have 4 maps, you have like 4 different... Wait, no, it's not 4. You have like 3 different ways of combining them. So with 4 maps, you have 3 different options. I think. I'm too lazy to actually do the math, but I think it's 3 options. So the chances of getting the map, the plasma that you want, is extremely high just from having 4 maps instead of like 3. So I don't think that's... I don't think you can really say it's like super energy.
Well, that I understand it correctly when setting it up, but yeah, a lot of learning. It's a good experience for the streamers and their fans.
Okay.
And I just realized that...
one other thing.
That you were talking about the vendor receipt not being RNG. So I'm just dumb. Okay, never mind.
Are you planning, this is very specific, are you planning to have any kind of like host for your live stream, or is it literally just going to be a random camera in the back, just like straight kind of, playing?
Well, Chris is the host, right?
I'll be the one talking on the stage during the announcement, but yeah, we're still working out the logistics of we're going to get someone to MC it and so on. But look, you and I can talk offline about the logistics of how to run ExileCon. I'd happily do that. I'd love advice on it. So let's do that. I don't know if the community want to watch us hash it out. Maybe they do. It's interesting.
In that case, guys, I'd like to end Baeclast. That was a great episode. And,
You just nailed yourself. You're going to get 10 pages of why Tarky thinks he would make a perfect host for the event.
Oh, I have one thing to remind people of before we end. The PlayStation 4 version of Path of Exile will come out in March alongside Synthesis. We don't know the exact date yet. We will announce it as soon as we do know. basically we'll probably have about 2 weeks of heads up, so we'll give a firm date with 2 weeks to go, and it's going to be a big thing. So if you've got a PlayStation and you want to play, we're very much looking forward to it. And of course, this means that all future expansions will come out on that platform with all the content of PC and so on and so on. So this is a big deal. And please, if you have PlayStation friends who wouldn't play because they don't want to play with the PC peasants or whatever, and they want to play on PlayStation, make sure they know they have to check this out at launch.
Nice. My girlfriend's actually been really annoyed that the PlayStation keeps getting delayed. She really wants to check it out, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. And the improvements we've made have also meant great things for the Xbox version and the PC version instead in terms of performance improvements. Like, I think we cut like 5 seconds off the Xbox loading screens or something recently when we were doing work to make the PlayStation version better. So it's just all around good stuff for all the versions of Path of Exile.
Nice. Not gonna lie, I'm considering getting a PS4 just to play the events. It is very cool that you guys are launching it apparently 2 weeks after the League launch. So I think a lot of people are preparing for like a racing ladder push on PS4. So definitely something.
One of the things we've been working on as well is having a website for the console versions. Because currently, if you're an Xbox player, you can't log into a website and see the ladder. And so we're taking the Path of Exile website. Actually, this is cool information. You might appreciate this. So we're taking the Path of Exile website and making it so that the console players can log in as well. And they can use the forums as their console accounts and that kind of stuff. You know, the supporter packs they bought on the console will give them the forum titles and blah, blah, blah. But it also means that they'll be able to do things like look at ladders and stuff, which is great. But the consequence of this is that supporting multiple Path of Exile realms backing the website lets us also support having no Path of Exile realm backing the website. And what that means is if we shut the game down for a patch, the website will stay up. And so that means we can read the patch notes and various stuff like that.
That's nice.
It'll just be that the things involving your characters go offline. And so this is a big change that's been a while in the works, but it will mean that you finally have some QOL for that website.
That's
nice. And this is coming sometime next League.
Sometime next week, hopefully. No, it's quite soon. We're actually deploying. There's a patch on Tuesday. Everyone's going to ask, why is there a patch? It does nothing. Well, what it's doing is this kind of stuff. We're trying to, we've got some realm architecture improvements, so in case there are tons and tons of players on Synthesis launch, we don't have a huge queue like last time. There's this kind of stuff. There's doing the split realm stuff on the website. There's all sorts of the stuff we're trying to get in before 3.6.0 because it might break stuff, and we'd rather do that this week rather than on 3.6.0 launch. So if you see a suspicious patch for no reason, it's just that. It's not drop rates. We don't even have to patch the client to change drop rates.
But sometimes the patches are drop rates, is what you're saying.
Oh, we totally screw around with drop rates all the time. The rumors are true.
One thing quickly though, so since you'll have all the console and PC players playing on, using the same website, would there finally then be some kind of way for people to link their PC and Xbox accounts? So for something like supporter packs, because that's been the biggest thing for me as someone who's actually very interested to play PoE on PlayStation. Losing 6 years worth of supporter packs hurts, you know?
We have to keep the supporter packs separate so that you only get the micro. There's rules about this, and unfortunately it means that we don't allow the accounts to be associated that way. If you bought the pack, you can only see it. If you bought it on Xbox, you can only use it on Xbox. And these are ongoing topics that I, discussed with the platform holders and stuff, but they've got legitimate reasons for having these policies. Like, they're rules that all the games have to follow, and obviously the best experience would be everyone can just share and move between the platforms, and that's the future I think people are moving towards. But as it currently stands, you have to keep the purchases on the platform that they got the money for.
You cut out for a second there, but it seems like it's mostly not a GGG issue, but more of a how Microsoft and Sony work issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity to it, but basically, yeah, there are rules about things, and it may be that we haven't pushed hard enough. It may be we're misunderstanding, but I'll continue to push on it. It's just that as it stands, we do not allow this kind of sharing of microtransactions between platforms.
Okay. Because honestly, that is the biggest thing for me, because I've actually set up some plans to do some streaming from PoE on PlayStation. I'm actually been really excited for it. But the main hindrance is the losing 6 years worth of MTX and supporter packs and going back to 4 stash tabs. And I can't really justify myself. We'll just buy it again, So.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. We will continue to look into it, but I don't have sage about that stuff. Okay. I mean, it would be great for us if we can get this to work, right? It's better for all the players, and that's better for everyone.
Actually, on that topic, Are there plans in place to increase the number of default stash tabs or allow for a default stash currency tab or something like that to
Or
be
a
put into place
default
for
premium
newer
tab?
players?
Currently, there are no plans for this, and we have to be very careful because I know it sounds good on paper. Say, look at a fifth tab because there are all these fractured items you've got to hold, or one other currency tab that's got lower limits because it teaches people about it, or add a premium tab so that they can engage in trade without having the forum item post, procurement kind of stuff. These are all valid arguments, but this is a core monetization, and this is one of the things we can't go back on. If we add that tab and then things go downhill, and we need to get rid of it or something, like that's just a bad situation to be in. So we're very careful before we change this kind of core stuff. Because what we know right now is the level of purchase on Path of Exile pay the bills and everyone is happy and we can keep making the game. And we're really careful before changing that kind of stuff, right? We're still doing mystery boxes exactly the way that we did a long time ago. There's all sorts of experiments we'd love to do, but we're just really careful. Even like putting hideouts in the most recent supporter packs was a decision that people have argued loudly about, because it's adding additional value to those packs that we can now never easily take away without subsidizing for something else and so on.
Another question on tabs. For the standard people, I've had this question a lot. Map tabs, with you changing the atlas a bit more rapidly now, and maps getting changed, like rotating into new sets. Every time they have to buy a new tab, if I understand correctly.
No,
Is
they
there
can just remove the maps.
any plans to address that issue?
You can just remove them.
So a map tab is able
Just
to
it
hold
takes a
one
while, but
series worth of maps at once. And I was talking to some people on Reddit about this, that we have been looking into this because of course it's not optimal at the moment. I mean, technically you can take the maps out and put them somewhere else, like in a quad tab, and then use your map tab for the current series and so on and so on. But then you have this segregation of like some maps from each series. So we were thinking our best idea so far was the concept of converting older series of maps to equivalent ones in the current series. So basically you can take the old maps out that you want to collect, like a few of each for prosperity's reasons, and then you can convert the rest to the current series and your tab is all converted and usable again. This type of thing we might do. It's a real pain for several reasons. I mean, there's hundreds of millions of maps in play here, and the way the map tab works is like already quite complicated to store so many items in one stash tab, essentially. So there's a lot of complexity with changing it. And even if we do work out a clear plan on how we want to do it, it then requires the large amount of Jonathan time, large amount of other people that are making leagues time, and the usual kind of it's slow to get stuff changed in the back end of Path of Exile thing. So I can't promise it fast, but it is a hot topic issue at the moment. We're fully aware of the feedback. And I wish it were a better situation there, but we don't have a good answer for you yet.
Okay. On a personal note as well, with tabs, and especially remove only tabs, I play a lot of solo self-found, and I have a strategy of whenever something goes wrong and I have to restart, I will migrate everything to the current league, which means I get a lot of remove only tabs. And if I use the map tab, I end up with, say, like 8 remove only map tabs with like 100 maps in them, and I have to manually take all those maps out. Is there any way that you could make that transition easier to remove the map tab, like divination cards, map tabs, and these things, to merge them?
Like click one button, fill up inventory.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's quite interesting. Yes, we probably can do that. We probably should do that. It's just about a matter of getting the work. And a tricky thing is, if we talk about all aspects of Path of Exile, we'll come up with a list of 50 things like that we should do, and then we have to pretend that we do in the immediate future. And so I'm hesitant to promise any one thing.
Sure.
Try to follow through with our promises.
I think also like the biggest thing with that, which I think a lot of people overlook, is it seems quite obvious to just like automatically update everything. But you do have those guys, especially in standard, who the whole point of it is to collect all the old legacy things. So you have to not only account for what's the best player solution, but then what's also the best solution for that one guy who wants a map tab of just all the old maps and then all the new maps.
I love the fact that people collect stuff, by the way, in the game. Like seeing people look at all my old maps with each amazing. We considered for a while putting little like expansion symbols on the items, so you collect all the base types. I've got all the swords from each of the expansions. There's all this cool stuff. In fact, we actually have a new type of stash tab coming out soon, specifically for collectors, which will be maybe releasing in the coming weeks. So that should be pretty interesting.
Ooh.
Since you like collector stuff, I have a pitch that I've been carrying around a little while now. I've like tweeted it at various people. Delve boss drops should have flavor text similar to race flavor text that says the depth it was killed at. So you have this extra little reward for killing a depth 900 all. You know, the All's Uprising says depth 900.
I like that.
And like that's really cool.
That is pretty awesome. You're a smart guy. That's good.
Well, thank you.
Octavian's gonna go to bed smiling now. That's
Steven's still red. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, when it comes to maps, could you give us a little bit of a clarification? I believe the wording was something like the Atlas is getting shuffled up again. Is that like a pretty major rework, like the recent one, or?
Okay. I can answer this instead of Christ. So they reworked, like they recode Atlas, like Atlas code in 3.5 to be as generic as possible, so that they can, with doing like that, they can reshuffle the Atlas and not need to manually code all the 3-to-1 recipes and corruptible outcomes, because that was done before. Before you had to do all of the shit manually, so you had to spend a lot of time with it. So I'm actually expecting Atlas reshuffles maybe even every single league. They set up the system so that they can do it, so I don't see why they wouldn't. It's a refreshing. You basically, I mean, even though like all the Atlas strats are still gonna be basically the same mechanic-wise, it's gonna be in different areas. You know, you kind of have to like figure out everything again, like what maps, you know, kind of thing.
Or is it just like a couple maps getting moved around and that's it?
It's a full scramble. Like, the goal here is diversity, so that you can't expect the same layouts, the same maps in the same places. I mean, obviously there's restrictions where the ones with crazy bosses have to go near the end and the ones with the baby bosses have to be at the start. But the intention here is replayability, because things are subtly different league to league. The pathing is different and so on. And so this is kind of a thing we're trying to do because we've got good tools for it now, where we think that we'll actually extend player retention in maps by having them be different, so you're not subconsciously getting bored by them. And, you know, this may be a kind of, you know, boring game designer thing to do in the background, but we think it's been helping so far, and so we'll continue to do that.
It is not boring. Trust.
This is going forwards potentially going to be something that's just regular, like every league. We get an Atlas reshuffle. Okay, cool.
Nice.
Wow, that's great.
I'm sad he didn't go to specifics.
I don't know if you have any information on this, but when Incursion wasn't implemented, you guys mentioned that you're not doing it for a reason, and that reason was that it's probably going to go through some balance changes. But when Incursion got released, not a whole lot happened. Has your mentality just changed, or was there not enough time?
I think it was lack of time. Last year was rough.
Okay, yeah.
Like, last year may have looked like a well-oiled machine to you guys because everything got delivered and it wasn't too, wasn't too buggy, but there was some rough weeks there getting everything ready in time. And as a studio lead, one of my goals is to not have rough weeks for the team, right? Like, I want the ability for things to be smooth and stress-free. And so, if there are small things that could have done better, I'm willing to accept that that's my failing rather than the team's failing. Because, I mean, I could have pushed for them to be done, but not at the expense of, the amount of time people are spending on this stuff.
Is there something that we can do as community members to maybe make it easier for you guys?
No, look, at the end of the day, we've committed to a 13-week schedule because we think it's for the best of the game, and everyone's got reasonable expectations. Like, Synthesis is slightly smaller than Betrayal, right? The amount of stuff in this is less than there was in Betrayal, and people have taken that totally fine. I haven't heard a single complaint so far that this is a slightly smaller league. I mean, it's certainly larger than Incursion was, and we've managed to pull quite a lot out over that Christmas period here. But there are going to be a few leagues this year that aren't quite so large, right? Like, if we can just make sure that people's expectations are reasonable, I would rather deliver slightly smaller leagues with lots more extra stuff that people are wanting to address parts of the game that I keep giving excuses for not having time to do. And
Atlas is always the same regardless what league you're playing, so the tough flow is every single league.
Then a really solid 4-0 later. So as long as the community are understanding of the fact that if we repeat last year's schedule and not getting anything else done at the same time, then I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, to be entirely honest, I fully anticipated Synthesis to be a much smaller mechanic than it. This seems, if anything, over-delivering.
Thank you. We try to under promise and over deliver, right? But yeah, we want to pack it full of as much stuff as we can, and there's so much stuff possible. We don't really know a lot about the rest of the leagues we're doing this year yet. We're currently in the middle of designing the 3701. We have an idea of what theme we want to go for. It's pretty cool. We have a lot of ideas about 390, which is the December one. We have literally nothing for 380 yet. May not make a lot of sense, but we'll get to that in a few months.
Just for the sake of Chris's time, since it is getting late for him, if the three of you want to give him like one last thing, or if Chris wants to give anything to us, I think we should kind of like round it out.
I already gave Chris the perfect opportunity to sell out MTXs, and he didn't take it. He's too nice of a guy, so I think I'm done.
Okay.
Shots.
I think we're pretty much good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time, guys. It was awesome.
Yep, thank you very much for coming on, and hopefully we can do this again. And I apologize for the Discord spam you're going to get from me in the next couple of hours.
That's no problem. I'll be asleep, so I'll see that in the morning when it's balanced Sunday, as I referred to it earlier.
I was just joking about the 10 pages. Tarky never puts in that much effort into anything. Don't worry, Chris.
Thank you, Rise. Yeah.
He was there saving the day this morning in an interview, asking all the good questions, which was awesome.
Okay.
See, I try. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for turning up today. If you missed any of the podcasts, don't worry, this will be on YouTube. And also, thanks again for Bex for all the loot box codes you gave us to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. 2 years I've had to put up with the Riser's bullshit, and the rest of the codes I'll give out on YouTube. And if you want to hit us with the outro, and then we can peace out.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
It's a good podcast. It was a good cast. That was... This was like a fucking 3... How long I've been live for 3 hours and 45 minutes. So let's like take a couple breaks off. That was like 3.5 hours of me reacting to this. Yo, Tarky, can I post this on I mean, I know I can. If we go in the court, I'm gonna win this because it's a what's the word? Fuck, I don't know the word, but you're finding me yeah, fair use. Yeah, I probably have to do a couple cuts because I had the break to transformative. Yeah, so it's not like it's not like he has anything to say against me, but I'm just asking do you? Because a lot of people like always ask me how do I feel about something said in Baeclast. So fucking hit them with the 3-hour video, dude. Oh god, dude. I think we discussed quite a bit of stuff during the whole Baeclast. Good job, by the way, boys.